Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to the HerStory Online Summit. This is Gertrude Macha here in beautiful Melbourne, Australia. And today I am graced with the presence of yet another fascinating group of speakers who are coming to us from all over the world, sharing their stories to uplift, inspire, and energize us. The HerStory movement is attracting women's stories that make a difference. If you're one of those women, go onto our website and register to speak, theherstorycircle.com. And I will start off with our first speaker, who is coming to us from the way of Japan via the US, Koyomi O'Connor, the author of A Sky of Infinite Blue. She's an author, a writer, a poet, a friend, a lifetime listener, an advocate for love, hope, courage, and potentials. She's a Buddhist, a former researcher who has a PhD, and is a retired pediatric dentist. Her passion has been working with Indigenous American women in communities over the last 15 years. Her interest in community, building with friends, authors, writers, and bloggers, publishing and editing experts and advocates for a better world. So, thank you so much, Kiyomi, for sharing your story with us today. You are opening up our day for the HerStory Summit, Day 6. Thank you again.
Thank you for letting me be here. My name is Kiyomi O'Connor. I am living in San Diego, California, in the United States. I am a 64-year-old, and I'm the author of the memoir, A Sky of Infinite Blue, a Japanese immigrant search for home and self. My memoir is about my spiritual journey. I'm the survivor of childhood emotional trauma. And most recently, I lost my husband and partner and best friend of 26 and a half years, 2016, July 4th. So I just passed his anniversary date recently. So just to talk about my spiritual journey, again, it is filled with tragedies and adversities. Since my childhood, my life wasn't what exactly I expected. I was very bright, kind, compassionate, good girl. But I have a familial situation made me feel I am much less than who I am. So I had a 2-year older sister and a 5-year younger sister. I'm in the middle of a Japanese parent. My father was a pretty bright, intelligent university professor. And my mom was homemaker with 3 daughters, looking after 3 daughters constantly. However, since my preschool days, so I was like 3.5, younger than 4-year-old, I had a cultural, maybe generational, familial dynamics in my household. My elder sister, 2-year-old elder sister, was always treated as a papa's child. And the eldest was always so special in Japanese families. And I was categorized and treated as a mom's child. And mom was from the right beginning of their marriage. She had been treated, bullied, and then kind of emotionally abused by my father's side of the family, including his parents and his siblings, even in-laws, wives. So anyhow, I was put into the specific classification. I was categorized as a mother's child, and then the bullying attitude from the papa's father side paternal family started when I was 3.5 years old. Whenever we have an opportunity to receive some gift or any hobby or anything, I can even I can be interested. Basically, I was excluded. So even my elder sister treated me like a servant. And then she was the only one princess and the queen in that family. And then my mother was always continuously, perpetually complaining about the situation over and over every day. So occasional assault by the paternal family was still painful, but it's not an everyday thing. But however, my mother had I think she has a psychological, mental wound by herself. So that's why she repeated, like almost depression. She repeated the problem talking to me. She kept me as her best friend. And always I was looking after my mother. As soon as I realized I was always constantly looking after my mother, caring about her, and then I was becoming codependent with her. So before whatever I have a need, I looked after my mother. I cared for her, and then even I was the victim of emotional abuse. I always prioritize my mother first. So that lasted a very long time, and then precipitated shame and also some sort of guilt. Why I am treated like this, and then how come I am worthless? I couldn't find the value of me. So I was doing pretty well at school, and then because I have to set up the armor instead of being abused, so I could perform much better as a brilliant girl, an intelligent girl with wearing armor. So I had a duality of life as soon as I became a kindergartner, and my younger sister was born when I was 5. I started to look after my younger sister and my mother, and then I was working like a servant in the house. And then the mother to my younger sister. My mother had a not just only mental psychological weakness, but and then confusion, but also she was physically weak. So I have to take up lots of household chores for her too. And then older sister, 2-year older sister, was always sitting on a throne or something, and she never really came to us to look after us or nothing. So anyhow, so that started, and then I accumulated my psychological wounds lasted a very long time until I became even 20s. So whatever I did, I had always a problem with my duality of life. I felt I was lying to myself. I know I have a different, vulnerable myself, but I was so afraid to look at. And then I am acting like I am perfect. So that torn my psychology and mentality so badly. So at the late 20s, I divorced my first husband, and then almost abandoning life in Japan. I took opportunity to come over to the States in the US. I started to work as a postdoctoral researcher at NIH, National Institute of Health. So that made my life something new. I was longing for change. So soon after I moved to States, I met my husband to be, Patrick. He was an English cancer researcher, but his heritage, his parents are from Ireland. So he has also a spiritual background, not based on U.S. He was immigrating in the States. So basically, two immigrants met together. But when I first time I met him, I knew I had met him in the past life, and he felt the same way. After we became a boyfriend and girlfriend for a while, and he told me even before I visited the house for possible tenant to become a possible tenant. He knew Asian woman is coming to visit to look for a room in the house, and he is going to marry that woman. So as soon as I visited for house hunting in his the house he was a tenant with, so he was also renting a room from the American couple, and I was about to renting a room from their house. So, but Patrick knew I was coming, and then I will be the destiny for him. So that's how we met. And then as we know, in the past lives, we've been connected. So we got closer pretty quickly in a few months after I moved into the house. And then we moved out into the condominium, and then eventually got married. And then so go back to my childhood trauma. My father was the major cause of trauma. However, no matter what he did or who did, I had always eyes and then heart to see different part of their personalities. I can't just put somebody down as a bad person. I have always some way, in a balanced way, I could see the best part of that person's personality. And then, it's a variety of characters is a component to make that person. But even I was a victim of emotional abuse. I loved my father very much. Part of me loved him so much, and a longing for him too. So while I was in the States, my husband Patrick poured lots of unconditional love to me, and then I become so resilient, and then more confident and a practical woman to carry out my own being. So at that point, 1994, by that time we got married, and then we had purchased the house, and then I started to think about my career. I started as a researcher, but originally I was a dental school graduate. I was a dentist, licensed dentist, and then researcher in Japan. So to me, seeing the patient and through my treatment, empowering the patient is a very big part of my life and career. I knew that. So I wanted to go back to dentistry. And then, but both Patrick and I are immigrant and working as a visiting researcher at that time at NIH. We are financially too difficult to even apply dental school and then going through the licensure. So I had no choice. After many, many years of absence in communication with my father, I went back to my father to asking for the help, financial help for 2 years. So that was, I was very surprised myself. I could come up to the point I can ask help from him. I would never, ever done that when I was in Japan. I couldn't, because I always avoided him. But my heart, originally, I loved him. But now, because of my heart was healed, and then I could come up to ask for help from him. That was a big deal. So, but anyway, he helped us for 2 years, just supporting financially for me to get through residency program in pediatric dentistry at University of Maryland. So he helped me, and by the end of that course, I was about to become faculty member at the University of Maryland Dental School. And then I was about to finishing licensure in Maryland. However, my father became terminally ill with cancer. So that was an absolutely devastating experience. I lost many, many years of heartfelt communication with him. As soon as we are beginning to open up more relationship, I lost him. At the end of his life, he left me Buddhist teaching. So he was very concerned about me living in the States alone. And so he left this esoteric Buddhist teaching for me to pursue. But through this teaching, my mother, my sisters, everybody was in a circle of peace. So through my teaching, I became the Buddhist practitioner first, but all of a sudden, whole family, my family, of course, my father was the first one, but he passed away. He let me become a Buddhist practitioner, and the whole family was bonded through the teaching. And so our relation has transformed through the teaching, the teaching of compassion and wisdom. So that was a very wonderful thing to happen. And then as soon as my father passed away, Patrick and I moved to San Diego. Originally, we started Bethesda, Maryland, in the States. However, Patrick wanted to start uh, his new career in San Diego as a pharmaceutical company's executive position. So we moved to San Diego and then pursue the Buddhist teaching until he died. So the Buddhist teaching has helped us tremendously to make our life enriched, spiritually bounded. And we became not just only partners, but almost inseparable being together.
Wow. What an inspiring story you have to share. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You went through a lot in your life, a lot of sadness, a lot of tragedy. Let me take you back to the point where you found forgiveness for your father.
Mm-hmm.
What is it that you did for yourself internally to get to that point? Because forgiveness is a difficult thing, especially within families,
Yes.
conflict within families. It's not easy, but
Yes.
they say that when you forgive, you're forgiving yourself. It actually is more for you than for the other person.
Yes.
So take us through the process that got you to that point.
Yes. The forgiveness is a very difficult practice, and forgiveness to my father, forgiving my father, and then other people is not just only my father or the person who assaulted me. I am forgiving. Forgiveness is about I forgive myself. I offer the love, self-love I never able to do. So the time I was going through difficulties, I couldn't love myself. I couldn't offer compassion to myself. Even I could offer compassion and kindness to other people, but I couldn't do to myself. So while I was living in a practical resilience required lifestyle in the States, I started to build my own confidence and then the self-care to myself. So that's the space and the room I could go back to forgive myself.
Wow. Wow. Now, this teaching that your father left for you, can you give us the essence of the teaching? What was it?
So the essence of our Buddhist teaching is to find ourselves in an enlightened state, joyous state in this very life. So practical daily meditation, and the meditation become a practice through the everyday actions. We are accumulating goodness in our life and in the world. So interconnectedness is the one key for us to find where we are. Not we are not the alone, but always interconnected with the light, with others. So
That is beautiful. That is absolutely beautiful. Sorry to cut you off there.
sorry.
Now, the book that
Yeah.
you wrote, when did you start writing it?
Yes.
And what is the book about? I love the title. Do explain the title as well.
Yes. So after my husband Patrick passed away from his illness, 2016, July 4th. I was absolutely lost myself. I thought that my identity, and we practice Buddhism together. So even faith, I thought, was taken. But about 9 months after he passed away, I began to write. At the beginning, my writing was like a gushing out the emotions, and then the difficulties and the pains and the anguish. That's the one that I have to gushing out at the beginning. However, I knew the deepest part of my wound, or the secret, wasn't coming to the surface. So I needed to even dig down very deeper and deeper. And then the title of my book is A Sky of Infinite Blue. So it is a spiritual metaphor. The sky is infinite. And we are part of this infinite world, universe, the part of light. But when we are in the darkness, we can't see that light. But as we are courageously try to find that light, we are finding that light, that infinitely blue, infinitely holding us in light. So,
Oh, that is so beautiful. Absolutely beautiful.
thank you.
And a reminder to all of us that we are infinite. Wow. So tell me exactly what we can find in this book. What nuggets of wisdom do you have to share?
Yes. Through my writing, at the beginning, the writing was emotional spills. However, as I dig down my truth findings, it become more and more universal value I found. It wasn't just me. It was beyond me. But I am the one experienced very difficult situation. But everybody in this world has a difficulty to overcome. So I wanted to share forgiveness, acceptance, and even grieving itself. Is you are not alone. Everybody has an opportunity to see that difficulty may be the seed of enlightenment.
That is so beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Now,
Yeah.
if I could take you back to the younger you, the
Mhm.
young woman who moved to the United States by herself,
Mhm.
left her family, everybody she knew behind.
Mhm.
And if you could go back and give her three nuggets of wisdom
Mhm.
based on what life has taught you,
Mhm.
what would you say? There might be a young woman right now who's in the same position, is
Mhm.
scared of the future, doesn't know what's out there. What three nuggets of wisdom can you give her?
Mhm. If I go back to the youngest myself, when I started the life in the States, I can give her nugget, three nuggets. One is be curious and be honest to yourself and be kind to yourself.
Very, very simple, but to the point.
Yes,
As women, we do forget to be kind to ourselves. I think sometimes we are our worst critics.
yes,
We say things in our heads to ourselves you would never say to your best friend.
yes, exactly. Like we try to be perfect, but
Yeah.
we forget who we can be.
That is so true. So now let me take you into the future. If time
Yes,
was an illusion,
yes.
you're now 100 years old.
Hmm.
You're sitting on your rocking chair,
Mm-hmm.
surrounded by your friends, your family, if you have children, your dogs, your cats,
Mm-hmm.
and you could go and have a conversation with that future you
Mm-hmm.
based on how you've lived your life and how she has led you to that point.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say to her?
Mm-hmm. If I meet myself in the future as 100-year-old woman, I will be very happy to see her, and I would admire her as she lived the life in full, and she had a multiple interesting careers, and but always she was always penetrated through the desire to be truthful and finding truth in her. So that tenacity is something to admire. So I would say I love you.
Fantastic. I love to ask that question because I believe that our future selves are waiting in the future for us to catch up with them.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes when I'm struggling with something I'm trying to figure out, a decision I have to make, I go into meditation and I tune into her energy and I
Mm-hmm.
ask her for guidance.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I just ask, what is my next step?
Mm-hmm.
And then the answer comes to me.
Mm-hmm.
So I like to share this technique with my listeners
Mm-hmm.
that we are born with all of the answers to all of the problems we have in life.
Mm-hmm.
It's already in you.
Mm-hmm.
And you can just dig deep into the future you, the person you want to become,
Mm-hmm.
and she will guide you there.
Mm-hmm.
So, as my last question for you, is there anything I should have asked you and I didn't?
Mm. Mm. It's a difficult question.
It could be your parting thought before we say goodbye.
um, I like to share with the Gertrude audience, and then the listener of this podcast. I like you to be yourself, and then I like to encourage yourself to be true you. So that's all I want to say.
Beautiful way to end our interview. And people can get your book on your website. Is that correct? Is it on Amazon? Where else can they get it?
Yes. Should I say that?
Yes, that we want people to get access to your wisdom. I have your website running at the bottom of the screen.
Yes.
So they can either buy it on your website or Amazon.
Yes. Anywhere internationally major booksellers online, like Amazon, Barnes and Noble, or Goodread, anywhere you can buy.
Okay,
Yes.
absolutely wonderful. Well, we look forward to
Yeah.
supporting you with this book
Thank you.
and helping you get it out into the world in a big way.
Yes.
Thank you for gracing us with your presence today. And thank you to everybody who's come online to listen. It was an absolute honor to share this amazing woman and her book that has come out. Go onto Amazon and find it and support to get her message out into the world. Bye for
Thank
now, everybody. I'll be back again tomorrow with yet another amazing guest. In the meantime, have a good morning, evening, or afternoon, wherever you are in the world. And bye for now.
Thank you.
Oh, wow. What an amazing woman and such a beautiful start to our day. One of the things I like about Yokomi is the peacefulness that she exudes. I think it might be because of her Buddhist practice. There is a stillness and a peacefulness about her. One of the biggest things that I got from his presentation was all about forgiveness, that when you forgive someone, you're really doing it for yourself, not for the other. The way she managed to heal her relationship with her father before he died is pretty special. So, how many people do you have in your life right now who you haven't talked with for years because of some family dispute or something that went wrong in the past? Can you go back and heal that relationship? We think we have lots of time to sort things out in life. The honest truth is, we don't. And I think that is one of the biggest lessons that she came to share with us today. And also the practice of Buddhism, that peace begins with you. Unless you are truly at peace with yourself, that ripple effect does not happen in the world. So meditation, mindfulness is a crucial part of all of our lives. Thank you so much, Waikomi O'Connor, for gracing us with your presence this morning. I'm going to line up the next video. I've been having a few technical problems this morning, so hopefully it will launch. Perfect. And I will read the bio of our next speaker. She's another fascinating woman by the name of Isdrira. I'm hoping I'm saying your name right, but when she introduces herself, she'll pronounce it correctly. She has written a memoir called Promenade of Desire, a Barcelona memoir. And she wrote this as she was working on a collection of personal essays about the many selves we leave behind, entitled Mandala Way. She is now a published author. She's a ghostwriter, an editor, and a writing coach. She was born and raised in Barcelona in Spain, but now lives in the United States. And she said when she spent her 20s experimenting with new freedoms afforded by the end of the Franco dictatorship, bouncing from man to man and job to job, I freelanced for prestigious publishing houses, traveled the world as a tour leader, and worked for the Olympic Committee. She came to the United States in 1992 to study a PhD in Spanish and Latin American contemporary literature. She was accepted by several universities, but chose the University of California, Berkeley, because it sounded bohemian, and she had a friend who lived in the city. She said, sometimes you just have to follow your gut. My PhD years were happy and fruitful. I made lots of friends, enjoyed the coursework, and ended up teaching at UC Berkeley for 12 years, first as a graduate student instructor, and then as a lecturer. She taught Spanish. She taught the Spanish language, literature, culture, and creative writing, and won 2 teaching awards. She then became a freelancer to the corporate world. So we're going to share your video. Thank you for gracing us with your presence this morning, and thank you for sharing your story.
Hi, Gertrude. Thank you so much for having me here. It's a great honor to be speaking with you. My name is Isidra Mencos, and I live in Northern California in a city called Concord, although I am born and raised in Barcelona, Spain. And
Okay, those are the technical issues I was expecting. I'm going to try and see if I can bring her video up another way. So please bear with me. Technology is great when it works. It's terrible when it doesn't. But I think there is another way to share this presentation. So give me a minute. It's always good to have a backup plan with these things. The best laid plans don't always work. So here we go, take 2. Hello, everybody.
Writer in writing for many years.
Day.
Hi, Gertrude. Thank you so much for having me here. It's a great honor to be speaking with you. My name is Isidra Mencos, and I live in Northern California in a city called Concord, although I am born and raised in Barcelona, Spain. And my age is 63 years old, almost 64. I'll be turning 64 in September. And I've had a very long and varied career, but what I would like to talk about today is how it's never too late to pursue your dreams. I always dreamed of being a writer, and I wrote on and off. I doubled in writing for many years, but I didn't really commit fully to being a writer until 2016. I was 58 years old and I had a very successful corporate career. I had a beautiful family with a son and my husband, but something was missing. There was something, a hole in me, a part of me that felt unhappy. And I knew it was because I wasn't pursuing that dream, even though I had published 2 books, but they came about almost by chance. One was an academic book, the other was a book that it was put together very quickly because a small publishing house heard me reading at a writers conference and they wanted to do something with me, but I hadn't really committed to a full schedule, daily schedule as a writer, and I always felt that loss, that gaping hole in my life. So it came to a point where I was carrying this low grade depression with me all the time. And finally, I sat down and I talked to my husband and I said, look, I just cannot do this anymore. I need to give myself an opportunity to pursue my dream. It was a very hard decision because I was the breadwinner or the main breadwinner in my family. My husband was a radio broadcaster for a nonprofit. So I really was the one bringing the bacon home for 20 years. So I talked to him and I talked to my son and I said, look, if I don't do this, I know I'm going to regret it at the end of my life. I have to give myself a chance to pursue this dream. But we're going to suffer financially. We're not going to have the same level of income that we had when I had a very plush corporate career. We may even have to sell our house in the future. So I just want to tell you this is what's going to happen. Are you ready for this? Will you support me in this journey? And both my husband and son said yes. So I have to give them props for supporting my dream as well. It's something that I couldn't have done without their support. So in 2016, I started thinking, I quit my job. I had been with that corporation for 10 years. Previous to that, I had been teaching at UC Berkeley, where I had studied my PhD, and I had had my own business as a writer and editor for Spanish speaking media in the US, very successful business. So after all that trajectory, I quit my job and it wasn't easy because all of a sudden you go from being editorial director of the Americas, managing teams in several countries, making a great salary, having great benefits. You know, you have the money, you have the prestige, you have the security, and all of a sudden all of that disappears. You don't have anything. You are nobody in this new profession that you have chosen. You don't have any financial security. It wasn't easy, but I did it. And what I did, since I still needed to make a living, is at the same time I started writing consistently, really with passion, I launched a business. as a writing coach and an editorial development editor, and also as a ghostwriter, helping other people write their own books. I have been working as a writer and editor all my life, so I have a lot of background on that, a lot of experience. I could do it bilingually. I'm bilingual, English, Spanish, although I speak English with a lot of accent. And so I launched that business, but at the same time, it was a delicate balance because I had to balance my writing time with my business. I couldn't let my business go nuts because then I wouldn't have had the time to do my writing. So I chose to work quite of part time and maintain my business under certain limits so I could actually have that time for writing. And at the same time, I did another big change, which is I started writing in English. Before that, I had been writing in Spanish. But because I was taking classes here in the US and I had to present my work in English, I had to start writing in English. And it actually was a really fun challenge for me. I already had very good, fluency in English, so that wasn't a problem. But it is difficult when you're doing literary writing. Luckily, I was very fortunate that pretty quickly my literary essays, personal essays, articles started being accepted in literary magazines, general interest publications as well. And in the meantime, while I was writing these short pieces, I started working on a memoir. And the memoir is called Promenade of Desire, a Barcelona memoir. Is coming out October 22, so the 11th of October of 2022. So it is really exciting to finally see my dream realized of writing this book. I have other books in the pipeline that are coming up after this one. And it is just incredibly exciting to feel that I've done it. And to me, it's just a testament that it's never too late to pursue your dreams. At this age, when you are in your 50s, even your late 40s, um, people start thinking about, well, what do I want to do with the rest of my life? We live a lot longer. So, even if we retire, we're not going to just sit at home or go play golf. The majority of us want to have a job or an occupation with purpose and intention. And I think that's really important to figure out what you're going to do afterwards. And many of us have had to postpone a dream because we needed to make a living and support our families or support ourselves. So I really think that that is a wonderful goal to look forward to. What is that pivot that you're going to do at a certain point in your life where maybe your intention and your purpose is going to go away from that career building, being very prestigious, making a lot of money, and you're going to start leaning again back into your dreams, the dreams that you always had as a youth, and exploring other adventures that also have intention and purpose. And perhaps that purpose is not anymore to have a very prestigious title, is more to be developing your inner life or to put something out in the world that is going to be inspiring for others. So I think that in retrospect, I would have done things a little bit differently. So that's why I feel like people that are contemplating a big change and pivot in their lives, they could benefit from starting to plan that pivot while they are still in that secure job, if they can. Like they can do things like explore their interest, educate themselves in the line of work that they want to do after. They can set up a website with their dream job or company or business that they're going to launch after they leave their secure, stable corporate job. They can even start creating a social media presence with this other personality or persona that you're going to have in your new business or dream or artistic career or whatever else you choose. So there's a lot of steps that you can take while you still have that job or that occupation that perhaps puts money in the bank, sustains your family, gives you some satisfaction, but that is not going to fill you all the days to the rest of your life. So for me, for example, when I started working in my memoir, something that was very clear to me and very important is that my story couldn't just be my story. It was the story of a generation because I grew up in Spain under a dictatorship. And that when I was 17, the dictator died. And then Spain in 3 years had transformed into a democracy with general elections. But the cultural change was a lot faster. It was a matter of literally like days. It was the dictator died, and we went from being a country with it was completely forbidden to even kiss in public. It was that repressive. And of course, political parties were banned. Any language that was not Spanish was banned. It was very repressive in every single sense. And all of a sudden, there were all these freedoms, and we kind of went to the other extreme, to extreme liberalism. And a lot of the youth got a little lost in that process, almost drunk on freedom. So I always felt that I lived in such a unique period of Spain's history that I wanted my memoir to show that interplay of the context, the history, with the personal, the story. And that was I really was trying to achieve is that we are not individual beings. We are always in relation to a context. We are always shaped by the forces that surround us, political, religious, cultural, familial. And if you don't see that and you don't examine and analyze that, oftentimes you kind of lose perspective of why you act like you act. And when you understand that bigger context, you can grow on compassion as well, because you can see, well, that person, that man was a real macho man, but look where he grew up. He grew up under a dictatorship where women were second class citizens. That's what he really learned from the time he was a child. It doesn't mean you're going to condone his behavior, but it means you're going to understand it a little better. Same thing with your own mistakes and flaws. Once you start taking into account your context, the trauma of your childhoods, or if you have any trauma in your childhood, the trauma of the political system you grew up in, whatever it is that has been affecting you, you're going to be a little more understanding of your own mistakes, your own flaws, your imperfections. And in the end, we are all imperfect. We are all human beings. Nobody's going to be perfect. So to me, it was really important in this memoir to show this larger context and how it affects our personal lives. And at the same time, to really focus in this aspect of we are all really imperfect. And, let's just accept it. And while we strive to be better and do better, at the same time, let's accept we won't be perfect and we will keep making mistakes. And perhaps we will hurt others and others will hurt us. But that doesn't mean that we cannot understand why things happen, perhaps forgive even. And for sure, really start accepting yourself more and more every day. And I think Jack Cornfield, who is a famous meditation teacher, said once that self-acceptance really is the most important part of spirituality. And I completely agree with that. I have to say, for me, with age, I have gained so much in self acceptance. I grew up with a lot of insecurity. I grew up with a lot of doubts, with a lot of trauma, in the sense that I grew up with not much intimacy in my family, feeling very isolated. All of that created a lot of self doubt. And as time has gone by, I have learned that it is really important to accept myself and also to be vulnerable and not to be scared to show the people around you who you are, your own insecurities, your own vulnerability, because that's really what connects with people. Because everybody suffers from those insecurities, everybody suffers from the same self doubt. And for me, being a writer, and especially being the writer of a very self revealing memoir, has meant that I live without secrets now. I don't have anything to hide. I am not ashamed anymore. I understand who I am, who I have been, why I did the things that I did, like, for example, self destructing myself a lot in my 20s. Um, I can understand all of that, and I can accept all of that and just consider it a part of my journey. And I have reached a point now that I I feel a lot more secure. So it's just, they say that the devil knows more from being old than from being a devil. And I agree. I think years bring with them a special kind of wisdom. And one of the most important pieces of advice that I can give anybody is, if you've grown up in such a way that it strip you of self-confidence, that made you feel insecure, you can give yourself that security. You can give yourself that acceptance. You can give yourself that self love. And once you give all of that to yourself and you accept who you are with all your flaws, you are not scared to show yourself to the world, and the world responds to a person that shows herself in all her plenitude, in all her sincerity, in all her facets. So that's definitely a big piece of advice that I can give anybody is just just rely on yourself, love yourself. Maybe you didn't have that acceptance, but you can give it to yourself. And once you give it to yourself, others will also give it to you.
Wow. What an incredible journey you've been on. Absolutely fascinating. They say that the richest places in the world are graveyards because they're full of people who had brilliant stories, amazing ideas, and they didn't have the courage to just take a pen and paper and put it down on paper. So, if you could go back to the younger you, it could be somebody who's listening to us right now, thinking about quitting a job, transitioning to do something creative, and you gave them three nuggets of wisdom on how to get started, what would those three nuggets of wisdom be based on what you've learned so far?
The first one would be, the first nugget of wisdom I would give them would be, don't be scared to take risks. Without big risks, you're not going to get big rewards. I took a lot of big risks in my life. Even before I abandoned my corporate job in 2016, one of the biggest risks I took was coming to this country. I came here with two suitcases. I came here to study a PhD. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done. I came here 2 months later. I had an ulcer. I was so stressed out with this lifestyle in America, everybody busy all the time, etc. But that moment of shock, cultural shock and loneliness, missing my family, missing my country, missing my language, missing my culture, transformed into one of the richest journeys of my life. And if I hadn't come here, I would never have been the person I am today. So, one, don't be scared to take risks. The second one would be prepared before you take that risk. One thing is taking risks, and the other thing is taking crazy risks. I mean, you can take risks, like, say, abandon a job to start a new career pursuing your dream. That's fine. But if you can, before that, make that jump, prepare a little bit, investigate how to do a good job in that new career path, in that new business. Try to start it while you still have your other job. You can start doing some things in the weekends, in the evenings. You can even start a blog and put it out into the world as a way to train yourself to be brave. So prepare, read about it, read podcasts about your future line of work or career. Excuse me, listen to podcasts. I would have to say, listen to inspirational podcasts like this one to see how other women have done it. Um, and the third piece of advice that I would do, let me see, I would say collaborate with others. I think that no work of art and no successful career is ever done by yourself. Everything you do is going to be better if you find collaborators, mentors, inspiration from somebody else. If you don't have a chance to find a in-person mentor, for example, look for it in podcasts, look for it in books, look for it in social media, wherever it is. But find those figures that are going to be the lighthouse that's going to take you home and that are going to support you in your down moments. And that might just be a friend.
I love that. Now, you made a decision much, much later in life. What was the camel that broke the straw that broke the camel's back? What happened to make you at 58 say, I'm doing this. This is what I want to do for the rest of my life. There must have been an incident, something that made you make such a big decision.
I don't know if it was a particular incident. I think it was more feeling always kind of depressed, even though things were going well externally. I was always kind of sad. There was a lot of depression that was running, like a low grade depression permanently. As sometimes I fell into an actual depression. And there was a moment where I remember I was coming back from a conference, a very inspiring conference with an organization, a Latino organization called the Latino Community Foundation, which is a grassroots philanthropic organizations by Latinos for Latinos. And I was driving in my car and I was about to start the whole process of doing performance reviews and writing the new goals for the next year. And as I was driving home in my car after that inspirational conference, I thought to myself, I cannot write one more performance review or goal for the next year. I am a person, I'm very passionate. So when I do something, I do it 100%. And in my corporate career, I gave myself 100% to it. It was a beautiful uh, career, I mean, a beautiful business with a beautiful mission. It was with Baby Center, a website that helped pregnant parents or mothers of young kids to have healthy pregnancies and healthy babies. So I love the mission. I love my team. I was very well respected in the company, but it was not what my heart wanted. And when I was faced again with going back and planning all the goals and objectives for the next year, I realized I cannot do it one more time. I just need to follow my heart. So that was really it.
That's beautiful. That is beautiful. Now, people come to you for ghostwriting. You have what you do on the side as a business, and I guess that is what will sustain you.
Yes.
But the stories that you're writing now, where do these stories come from? Where does the creativity come from? Because a lot of people get stuck in coming up with creative ideas. Where do you get your creative ideas from?
Well, Flannery O'Connor said anybody who has survived childhood will always have material for writing. And I think that's true. I chose to write memoir, and that was a surprise to me because before I always wrote fiction. But I took a class of one day class. That was when I still was in my corporate job, and it was Zen and writing. So it was in a monastery, in a Zen monastery. We had a Zen priest and a writing teacher, and he happened to be teaching memoir in an online course after that one day class. And since I liked the teacher, I enrolled in his class, and I thought, oh my God, this is going to be a piece of cake. I already have the plot, I already have the characters. Then I realized writing memoir is as difficult or even more difficult than writing fiction, but I was already in it and I loved it. I had a lot of things to kind of clarify from my life. So I do look for inspiration in my own life. I also write a lot of personal essays, so shorter pieces, and I'm currently working on a collection entitled Mandala Way. And that is because as a writer, you really fixate on your obsessions. Those obsessions are going to be a through line through your books. One of my obsessions is that everything that you love, it eventually goes away. If it's a person, they may pass away. If it's an object, you may leave it behind. I've left behind so many things, including my country, my family, my language, so many things. But if you look at it from the perspective of Buddhism, mandalas are these beautiful creations that after a while disappear. And that's the way it's supposed to be. You just focus on the present of creating something beautiful with meaning, and then it goes away. So when you look at your losses in life from that perspective, you realize that, yes, things go away, things that you loved. but that doesn't mean they completely go away. They are in you, they live through you. And then, as you go by, they are a part of your life, if they are not physically in your life.
Oh, I love that. You've actually touched on something, an experience I had very recently. I lost my mom on the 23rd of April, 2020.
I'm sorry.
So right in the middle of the pandemic, I couldn't even go back to Africa to bury my mother. And I went into a state of depression for almost 6 months. It really affected me. And then one morning, I woke up in a dream. And in the dream, I was brushing my teeth. I spat into the sink and I looked up into the mirror. And the person looking back at me wasn't me, it was my mom.
Oh my God.
In this dream, she was vibrant, she was healthy, she was well. And she said to me, "Do you see what I did, baby? Do you see what I did? I made you look like me." So I was a splitting image of my mother. People used to think we were sisters. She said, "I made you look like me so that you'll remember I haven't gone anywhere." She said, "I am in you, I am with you, but you need to get up and do your work. So long as you're 6 feet above the ground, the job is not done. Get up and do your work." And I snapped out of a state of depression because of that dream. So what you're saying is very, very pivotal. These mandalas, they come and they go, and we enjoy them while they're vibrant and colorful and we can see them and touch them. But then they wither away. Doesn't mean they're gone completely. They've just transformed into another energy. That is a very, very beautiful analogy and something for people to hold on to, especially in times of grief.
Yes,
Thank you
that's
for
a
sharing that.
beautiful, beautiful. Gertrude, you gave me goosebumps with the story of your mom and your dream. That's absolutely gorgeous. And that's another thing that is so important, because I also had a dream once that changed my life. And it was, I had a problem with alcohol when I was in my 20s. And it was a dream that actually saved me from that. I was working with a Jungian therapist, and Jungian therapy is all about dreams. And that's another thing I recommend to anybody who's going through trouble. Do look for someone to help you out, an expert. In my case, I love Jungian therapy. And I had this dream, and this is in my memoir. I had been having a lot of issues with alcohol for 10 years, and I didn't think it was a problem, because to me it was just when I was going out dancing, which was 3 or 4 nights a week. And I felt, I'm getting up and going to my job, and I do great in my job. Why is this a problem? Everybody has fun when they go dancing. Everybody drinks, yeah, but not everybody gets completely drunk like I did. So finally, I had this dream one night where I was coming to my house, and they told me that a little boy that was going to sleep, that it was about to go to bed. The only way he went to bed and went to sleep is if he drank a shot of cognac. And when I heard that, I was like, "That's crazy! You cannot give cognac to a little boy." So then I went to visit the little boy, and the cognac was on the nightstand. And I said, I grabbed the glass and I said, "You can't drink this. This is not good for you." When I did that, that little boy transformed into a devil, and he got up and grabbed the nightstand and wanted to hit me on the head with the nightstand. And I woke up in a panic. And when I brought that dream back to the therapist office, even before she told me, I knew exactly what it meant. I had been giving cognac to my hurt little child, just to quiet my hurt and my pain, from different traumas in my life. From that moment on, that problem with alcohol disappeared. I could have a drink, but I didn't need to get drunk. It just was immediate. It was a message from my subconscious.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
What an amazing dream.
yeah. Listen
Dreams
to
are
your inner
powerful.
voice. Yes,
Yes.
yes. It's
And
your
we do
inner
have
voice.
all the answers. We have all the answers to all of our problems. So I'm going to end our interview with a bit of a little experiment. And I'm going to teleport you into the future. Let's imagine that time is an illusion and it doesn't exist. You've just talked about your past. Let me take you into the future. You're now 100 years old. You're sitting in your rocking chair, surrounded by your grandchildren, your children, your husband, your dogs, and your cats. And if you could have a conversation with that future you, this wise woman who's led you to that point, what would you say to her based on how you're living your life right now?
I would say, thank you. Thank you for never giving up. Thank you for your resilience. Thank you for your bravery. Thank you for your vulnerability. Thank you for having been there for me.
Fantastic. Again, I love to share that question because we are all guided by our future selves. And sometimes when you're struggling with something, go into meditation, go into prayer, and ask your future self, how am I supposed to do this? You're born with the answers. You know exactly what you're supposed to do, but sometimes we forget just by the condition of being human. So thank you so much for gracing us with your story, gracing us with your presence today. And thank you to everybody who's tuned in. The Her Story movement is attracting some phenomenal women on the planet. Tune in again tomorrow when I come back with yet another amazing guest. In the meantime, have a fantastic day, morning, or evening, wherever you are in the world. And Isdra, thank you so much for this interview.
Thank you, Gertrude.
Bye for now, everybody. Wow, what an amazing story. Even though I have talked to all of these amazing women in person, it always blows me away when I go back and revisit these conversations at the nuggets of wisdom that they share. I love the fact that she went back to work at the age of 58 and followed her passion and her bliss, changing careers and becoming a writer full time. So how many of you are holding back on going to pursue that dream job that you feel you were born to do your whole life? If you feel it in you, trust yourself, take that risk, and see what happens. You might be pleasantly surprised that it's not going to be as difficult as it feels before you start. All right, so I'm going to try and line up the next video. Again, this may or may not work, so bear with me. If it fails, then we will just move on to the next video, but here we go. Okay, we're in luck. It looks like it is going to play. So my next guest is Jane Lynn Britton. Jane Lynn Britton is coming to us with another amazing story. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what nuggets of wisdom she's going to share with us today.
Hi, everyone. I'm so glad to be here. I'm Jane Lynn Britton, and I live in New Jersey in the United States, and I am a young 55 years old. I'm also the mother of two amazing children. They're grown-ups now. My daughter is 23, my son is 21, and my son has autism. And this is really why I'm excited to be here and share with you a little bit about my story. I've always wanted to help people have a career in human resources. I love leading and coaching and training and connecting and helping people be the best versions of themselves. And then when my son actually was born and he was developing beautifully, but around the age of 18 months, he started to regress into autism. That threw me for a loop, not only as a mother and all the plans I had for my family, but as a professional and what I'm used to doing in terms of connecting with people and helping them thrive. And that just wasn't happening with him. So we did a lot of things that I think a lot of parents do, is we did as much research as we could. And this was actually before the internet was as robust as it is now. So we did a lot of reading and sought out lots of doctors, flew all over the country, spent literally hundreds of thousands of dollars over 5 to 6 years looking for the thing that would really help him. And everything helped a little bit. But as I was going to work one day, knowing I'm helping others be the best versions of themselves, I turned around and I saw this beautiful blue-eyed, blonde-haired boy. And I realized he's the one who needed me the most. And so I made a really difficult decision. I quit the job that I loved, and I decided to homeschool him. I brought him home, brought him out of school, and we found a program. It was called the Sunrise Program, SON for sun. And we created a homeschool program based on that model. And that really changed my life. I realized I had been looking to everyone else to help him. And the person he really needed the most and who could help him the most was me and my husband and our community. And so thankfully, we all rallied around him, and we ran this program. I learned how to kind of connect with him, how to get him to look at me, how to get him to interact with me. And when we started, this is big, because when we started, he was in the corner of the room, eyes glazed over, didn't even know I was in the room with him. And by the time we ended, he is a very social and very interactive, et cetera. So we really were able to help him cross that bridge back into our world. And during those 8 years, I recruited a team. We had 30 people working with him. And if I look back, I think, how could I have done that? But really what it took was just being open and honest and asking for help and going to my community, to friends at church, at the bank, in the grocery store, neighbors, and seeing who wanted to help, who wanted to learn how to connect with him and how to help him grow. And before we knew it, we had this robust program running, and we started doing fun activities like car washes, lemonade stands, a field day. We ran a summer camp in our backyard, just because I wanted to give him those social opportunities that I knew I couldn't find in the community the way I wanted. So I learned that's okay. We can create it ourselves. And through those opportunities, we saw him, my son, William, really learn and grow and start to step into his potential. And when he went back to school, I was really happy. 8 years later, he would watch the school bus. He would watch the kids in the neighborhood get on the school bus, and I knew he wanted to go. And that just filled my heart. He was ready. So we enrolled him in school, and he was a very different child than when he came home. He was engaged. He could listen and follow direction and has amazing eye contact, really showing off all the things that we helped him learn. When he went to school, I realized I needed to share the things that I had learned. When we started this program, I knew nothing. I didn't know anything about autism. I didn't know how to connect with him. I didn't know how to be a mother to him. And that's all I wanted to do. And so I said, I want to help other people, other parents, learn some of these simple strategies, simple techniques, just to get them to look at us. Like even something as simple as holding a pen or a crayon. He loves crayons, and saying, hey, do you want a crayon? Notice I'm holding it near my eyes. Guess what? He's going to look at my eyes because he wants that crayon. Or walking in with a really silly hat that's bright and colorful because, oh my gosh, that gets his attention. So bringing some simple strategies and helpful tips to parents so that they can feel less overwhelmed and learn to connect with their kids and help them thrive more is what I wanted to really do. And so I actually created an organization called Navigate Autism. I created a TV show because I wanted to also reach parents in a fun way. And I was on Facebook Live for about 1.5 years, just doing some coaching tips every week. And most recently on my website, navigateautism.com, I've put what I call pod tips. I love podcasting. I think it's a great way to reach people, and they can access it, listen to it when it's convenient for them. But I created these 5-minute podcasts. So I call them pod tips, and there are 30 of them, just about quick hits about what you can do to inspire eye contact or social activities, or how important perspective is, and how that changes us as parents, and how we feel confident and comfortable and empowered, or even judgment, and how judgment can get in the way. It's something we all face, but really how powerful that is. And when we can learn to drop the judgment we have of ourselves or our children, how much better we feel, how people around us change and show up more, and how we are able to be more successful interacting with our kids, etc. So there are these wonderful little pod tips that I have on my website now. And I created that just because I'm trying to find different quick ways that parents can easily find support for themselves and for the children. There are many things that I've learned, but like I said in the beginning, one of the things I learned the most is that we as parents are our kids' best resources. Very often we're overwhelmed. We're juggling so many things: doctor's appointments, school, IEP meetings, our own work, our family, etc. And we may not realize how resilient we are, how impactful we can be, and how we can use our own skills and abilities, even for 5 minutes a day, to really make an impact in our kids' lives. And that impact changes our kids, and it changes us. And one of the things, especially during COVID, I've heard so much from parents is, how do I really connect with my kids? We're together all the time. We're forced together, or there's our lives have been turned upside down. And I don't feel like our interactions really mean anything. And I say, well, if you think about it, you're with them. Just carve out a short period of time, 5 minutes a day, maybe more, but 5 minutes at least, and just be present. Put away the cell phones. Don't think about laundry. Don't think about what you're making for dinner. Just be present and in the moment. And when you do that, it feels like 20 minutes, but when you do that, you really connect. You get to know each other, and you get that feeling that you're looking for, and your kids do too, and you both feel seen and heard. And so that's the start of building longer connections, but really for what it is that most parents and kids are looking for. So what I try to do now is I participate in many webinars and webcasts and podcasts, as well as, like I said, making these pod tips just so that I can share whatever information I have that can help other parents. I was also an autism life coach for a while, but my focus and passion is about education, helping others, and offering of myself when I can. I'm also a board member for a nonprofit organization that is focused on building group homes for our children with disabilities when they get older. And so I think it's really important when we can to give back, and that's why I'm here to share my story and hopefully help other parents of children with autism or other disabilities to really feel like they have the ability. There's someone there, or there are resources there to help them make a positive impact in their life.
Thank you so much for sharing this amazing story. You know, it's a real source of inspiration for mothers, parents out there who are struggling with kids with autism. Now, if I could take you back to the younger you, that young woman who was confronted with an issue, she had no idea where to start, and you could go back and give yourself 3 nuggets of wisdom based on what life has taught you, what would those 3 nuggets of wisdom be?
Oh, that is a really great question. The first thing that comes to my mind is, don't try so hard, and which leads me to don't judge yourself. It's there's this internal human, struggle that's kind of like human nature, which is we want things, and that gives us focus and direction and goals and milestones and helps us accomplish things in life. And those are great qualities. I work with that all the time in human resources and companies. But what easily happens and so quickly happens is that want turns into a need, because I need it now. I want it so badly that I need it now, or I put expectations on it. And when we don't meet those expectations, the judgment comes in. We don't meet the expectations, and then we get disappointed, and then we get stressed and overwhelmed, etc. And so if I knew then that it's okay, that life is a circuitous route. It's not nothing, very few things are linear, including our children's learning, our career, our life. So have fun. So I think it's, don't need it so much today. Have fun, enjoy the process, enjoy the journey. You hear this a lot, I think, but I do believe it's true that life is about the journey. And it's really, not something I would think I would ever have thought I would say years ago, because I was so wrapped up in the fact that my son just got a diagnosis of autism. I almost wouldn't believe it. And I think two things. I think number one, being in the field I am in and seeing that people always have potential and can meet it. I had seen his potential. I still believe there's more for him to reach. And so I would not give up. But the second thing is I realized about myself is I told myself I will never stop being angry about what happened to him, because that will motivate me. And if I had believed these things I'm sharing with you now about don't get caught up in the need, I wouldn't have believed that. And it took me years of holding on to this heavy anger, and you name it. I was angry at myself. I was angry at doctors. I was angry at the food that we were eating. I was angry at the environment. I was angry at everything I could think of. And when I dropped that anger, I felt so much better. But it took someone really wise saying to me, Jane Lynn, do you think if you drop that anger, you will stop doing everything you possibly can for your son? And when he said it like that, it was like an eye-opening experience. Like, of course not. I'm never going to stop. And so it was a conscious decision for me to allow myself to stop carrying that anger. And in that, I realized too much. It doesn't mean I have to stop wanting it, but I just have to stop putting this negative energy into it. And so judging it less, stop needing it so much, and enjoying. And I guess the third would be enjoying each day. And ironically, the power in that is so much bigger than I ever could have realized. Because when we do those things, when I did those things, when I know other parents are doing those things, we relax more. And guess what happens? Our children show up more because we give them the space. They're not feeling that energy. Our kids are really sensitive in many cases. And so they're reacting to this negative push that we're putting out there. But when we're relaxed, enjoying life, not just our kids, everyone around us is enjoying life. But then that's where I say the magic happens. That's where the connections take place. That's where we all learn and inspire each other to continue to learn and grow.
What I feel you're really hitting on that makes so much sense. You talked about being fully present. A lot of times we worry about things we have no control over. We think of things that may or may not happen, and we go into the future, or we go into the past, like you were saying. Was it the food we were eating? What caused this? You're looking for something in the past, to the point where you fail to be present and in the moment. Every single minute with that child is what's really important, right?
Oh, Yes. Yes, and I can expand on that if you want. Definitely. And there's so many benefits to being present and in the moment. One is when we're in the past, we're thinking about all the things we should have done, could have done, would have done, and then we get, that anger, that resentment that I was mentioning earlier. And then when we're in the future, we're fearing things that quite possibly to something and really wasting our time for something that may not take place. And when we're having those negative emotions, we're not able to think clearly because we're so, stressed and uptight. It's just our physical nature. But when we're present and we can be in the moment, it's fun. It's uplifting. It's like the person I had a friend I worked with. I loved her. She's the kind of person who would leave for the airport 30 minutes before the flight left and still make it. Still make the plane. Why? It's because she's like present. She's enjoying life. She's not worried about anything. She's just going through, right? And I think that's why. I mean, there are obviously other reasons that probably universal things. But being present is comfortable. I really think it allows us to unlock our creativity. We are more observant. And in terms of if you're really wanting to connect with a child who is not in that same space at that moment, when you're present, they feel more seen and heard, but also you're observing things. You're noticing those things. And those are the things that you can use to help your child. So I'll give you an example. None of us in life really want to will do much of anything unless we want to do it. So in other words, someone says, "Hey, Gertrude, let's go to a movie. We're going to go see this new sci-fi." And you're like, "I hate sci-fi." You're not going to go. But if you love like a nice romantic comedy, you'd be like, "Yes, I'm going." Right? So that would be your interest. So if I'm watching William and he's like taking a pen and like going like this, I'm like, okay, he likes rhythm. He likes drumming, maybe,
Wow.
right? And so I'm trying to connect with someone who doesn't care about social connection. So I might go get some spatulas and start drumming, or I might get some pens or drumsticks even, and watch and observe. And I actually did this, and I saw him kind of look at me. I'm like, whoa, I just got to look. I got to glance.
Oh, wow.
Right? How did that happen? So
Yes.
using that wonderfully beautiful feeling place of being in the present moment allows us to be more in tune with others around us, pick up on those motivations, things they are interested in, and use that to hook in or offer activities, things that they might enjoy that might build a connection for us. So there's a lot of great things about being in the present.
I love that. I read a book once called Welcome to Holland. This is a book that every parent who's challenged with a child with special needs should read. It's about a woman who says she was preparing for her pregnancy and it felt like she was going to France. Packed her suitcase, was ready for the birth of this child, and then the baby came and the baby was disabled. And it felt like she had got to an airport and somebody said, "Welcome to Holland," instead of "Welcome to France." And she had to learn a whole new language, a whole new way of being to be able to communicate and work with her baby. It's a book that I recommend to anyone with special needs children. It's like you're saying, it's just learning a new language, a new way of communicating. And the more present you are, the better you're going to be at being able to help your child. So now let me take you into the future. If time was an illusion and your past, your present, your future could exist in the same timeline, and you could teleport into the future and have a conversation with a 100-year-old you, what would you say to this wise woman who's led you that far?
There are so many things that I would want to say, but the first in my mind is Congratulations. So that is a great question. Being in the future, there's so many things I think of that I would want to tell myself, but the first thing that comes to my mind is congratulations. Like, you did it. And it doesn't mean that I accomplished everything I wanted to do, but you accomplished so much. And the reason I say that is I don't think we praise ourselves enough. Praise is important for our children, for our colleagues, for our relationships, but we don't praise ourselves, and we don't look at. If I were to have a conversation with the 100-year-old me, I would say, congratulations. I think it's so important that we remember that we work really hard and we accomplish so many things, and that praise is very important for us to recognize all the things that we do throughout our life. Sometimes I don't realize it myself until I look back maybe 10 years and I say, wow, we ran that program for William and look how far he came. Or, wow, I created a TV show and I was able to help and reach millions of parents, helping them learn simple strategies. And that's important because there's so many things like we want to accomplish, and if we get hooked in that need, we might forget to say, you know what, you did a good job. You did a good job. So I think congratulations would be what I would say.
What has this experience done for you as a woman and as a mother?
What I've learned as a mother is how important it is to really understand that our kids see and hear things differently than maybe we say it or think it or know it to be. And that's okay. To take a minute and really communicate with our children when we can, openly, honestly, listen, even ask, how are you interpreting this, or how are you doing in the situation? So for an example, my daughter, who doesn't have autism, understood the challenges my son had, understood that he needed 24/7 and still needs 24/7 help. My daughter knew that he needed help 24/7, but she still felt second best and still felt like everything we did, our whole life was centered around him. Even though much of our life was centered around her, it's just that's how she perceived it. So that's important to take a step back and openly, honestly communicate with our kids and really understand that their perception is important and true because it's how they're living their life and how they're seeing life. And that helps me be a better mother, understanding where they're coming from.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for this enlightening interview. I'm hoping that there is a mom out there who's faced with this challenge, can now see clearly. Sometimes when you're in the middle of it, you can't see the wood from the trees. So thank you for sharing your story. And thank you to everybody who's tuned in today. The HerStory movement is attracting some phenomenal women on the planet, sharing their stories to uplift, inspire, energize, motivate somebody else. And that's why we do this. So thank you again, Jane. Have a fantastic day.
Thank you.
Bye for now, everybody. I'll be back again tomorrow with yet another amazing guest. Enjoy your day. Hello, Jerry. Wonderful to have you with us today. How are you? You need to unmute your sound. There we go.
It's so hot here that my computer keeps telling me it's overheating. I'm overheating, but my computer's overheating too.
Oh no! Oh no! Jerry, the sound is not very good. Your connection is not. I can hardly hear you. There's a background sound, almost like you're in the wind. Want to mute you for a minute?
Does that help?
That's much better.
I
That's
had a
much
fan.
better.
I had a fan blowing on my computer.
Okay.
I don't want my computer to overheat.
Okay, so maybe while
Funny
we're
how
playing the videos, you can switch the fan on and mute yourself so that doesn't come through. How are you, Jerry?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm like I said, I'm super hot. It's 107 here, and I had to set the motorhome up by my. So
Oh, wow.
it's hot out there. Yeah.
So you guys are going through all these heat
Hold
waves
on.
at the moment in California.
There's. Can you hold for a second? There's someone at the door.
Okay. So our beautiful Jerry is joining us from California today. She was driving from Utah to California and has just arrived. So today I have some company from Jerry, for those of you who know her already. And we'll just give her a minute to get settled before we introduce our next speaker and share with you the next presenter. Maybe while I'm waiting for her, let me see if I can line up the next video while Jerry is getting herself sorted. And then, you're back.
Yes. The management wants me to fix my hose, so I'll probably have to go do that right now. It's leaking, and I'm not allowed to let it leak.
All right. So
Okay.
you sort yourself out. I have a video to play while you get settled. And then as soon as
Okay.
this video is finished, you'll be back and then we can catch up and find out what has been happening in your life.
Well, I'd like also to talk about this last video you showed. I missed a lot of it, but I connect with things she was saying. So I'd like to talk about that too.
Okay. So do you want to sort yourself out first?
I have to go do this. They're standing at the door.
Okay. You're going to do that. And then we'll catch up and then talk about that before we.
Okay. Sounds great.
And the next one. Okay. Thanks, Jerry. All right. So our next video is coming from Margot Levette. Again, I'm going to first of all line up her video and make sure the technology is going to work. It has been an interesting day. In fact, an interesting week with technology working some days and some days not. It looks like we're in business with this one. So let me line it up and then read her bio. All right. So our next presentation is coming from Margot Levette, who successfully reinvented herself, moving from a hobbyist to a professional podcaster. Her company is called Go Beyond the Interview, LLC. And she became home of the podcast, Her Business, Her Voice, Her Conversation, and podcastacademyonline.com. She has worked with dozens of CEOs, authors, and experts in the business and self-development industries. She's done interviews with influencers such as the former Congress member Walter Tucker III, Essence Magazine editor-in-chief, Susan L. Taylor, the jazz legend Carmen Lundy, and podcasting pioneer Eva Terra, Evergreen Stories with her podcast. Margot is well respected by students and sought after by podcast guests. Insights from her podcast have found listeners in over 30 countries and 50 US cities, while catching the attention of magazines such as Womb Lead, Voyage LA, and the Huffington Post. As a podcast instructor, she can help mature adults become podcasters using her proven coursework at the Podcast Academy Online. Podcast Pose is a tool to streamline the podcaster's workload by staying industry informed, accountable to the audience, and connected via a community. So, Margot, the stage is yours.
Hi, everybody. I'm Margot Lafette. I am based here in Southern California in the United States of America, and I am age 68 years old. My story really begins when I found my voice at a job that I worked for 26 years. Yes, I come from that era where your parents say, get that good job, that good paying job, and you keep it until you retire. I worked there for 26 years. I had conversations with people all over the globe. I mean, just my goodness, that was my job, to speak with the customers. But one day I got a phone call and it chilled me to my bone. It was a man that was just spewing with rage, and it was terrifying. I would never forget how he, oh, if he could have just leapt through the phone, he would have. And the thing about it, he wasn't just anybody. He was a contractor, someone who worked hand in glove with this major corporation that I was an employee of. And it left me literally shaking in my chair. And the people around me saw how it really brought me to my knees, and I made a report to HR. A month went by. I'm still shaking. I'm mad. I can't get past what happened to me that day, that fateful conversation. So a month later, I go to HR. I'm wondering what happened. They're telling me we don't have access to the report. We don't even know where it's at. So I'm super mad by that time. Another month goes by, and by that time, I am visiting a therapist. I'm telling you, I am so messed up. That phone call triggered, later on, I found out it triggered domestic violence that happened to me when I was 19 years old, and I never resolved it. But I call it a fateful day, the day that I took that call, because this happened the end of August. By December, the therapist told me, it's you or the job, and I chose me. So that good job that my family said, you better keep that good job, I had to say goodbye. Got a few things. Corporate always tells you to record everything. I got a few papers and I was gone. I didn't retire. I quit. Took a year off. Worked with a therapist. My blood pressure was off. My mind was off. I'm going to work crying every day, and I am a total mess. So, like I say, I take a year off. And about that year, about the top of that total year, my therapist says, I think you're ready. You're ready to say goodbye to all of those hurts. Go to the ocean, do whatever you need to do, and I want you to have a ceremony. So I thought, oh boy, I think you're right, Doc. I think you're right. I think you're right. I'm ready. So I got a bright fuchsia piece of paper. I wrote down all of those things that I wanted to say goodbye to. I listed them one by one. I drove to the Pacific Ocean and I went to a specific location where I could walk out onto the rocks. And I balled that piece of paper up. I flung it out into that Pacific Ocean as far as I could. I was ready to go ahead and retrieve it if the tide brought it back, because I was determined. That day I knew I was not going to be haunted by anything. New me, brand new day. And do you know that tide took it out and it never came back? And those things that were listed on that sheet of paper never bothered me again. I refused. I took a stand. So in my new freedom, I decided to come back to what was a hobby, and it was podcasting. I've been doing a music show, but this new me was deeper than a music show. I lost my voice. I lost my confidence, but I knew I wanted to turn this hobby into a business. So I dug down deep and I invested. I threw all bets on me. I invested in the best advisor that I could find. And in a couple of months, we had a podcast together. Her business, her voice, her conversation, because I knew my new voice was to help other women find their voice. And when you're coming from corporate, you need to know that there's inspiration, there's how to information, and you can do it. I wanted to build that platform for women, and that's exactly what I did. As God would have it, I was given the opportunity to take this brand new platform over to a network. And I'm very competitive. And once I got over there, I tell you what, I believed in the concept and I had my confidence up. I'll go marching over there. And before long, this brand new podcast network was bringing in well over 1 million downloads and streams. So my competitive self, I always was in the top 4 categories. So that gave me a whole lot of listeners over there. Proof of concept. That's what I like to say. But then when COVID struck, I felt the urge to teach. I knew that there were not many minority women standing in their voice in this thing of podcasting that I had fallen in love with. I saw the power of it, and it just, oh my goodness, it was such an open season, and it still is as far as I'm concerned. So I began to teach podcasting. And let me tell you, all of this started at age 61. And I began to teach podcasting at an age when some people are just say they're babysitting and they're in their rocking chair. Hey, I'm learning new software techniques. I'm throwing all bets on me. I'm sharpening my tools because I want women to know that at age 65, 66, I'm ready to teach you podcasting. We're not going to stumble over the technology. I'm going to give you the theory. I'm going to give you the mechanics, and I'm going to give you the technology. And when I'm finished with you, you are going to be a podcaster. Find your voice. Voice, is our podcast is real estate. And when we look at how many women of color are actually podcasting these days, we are in a minority. And I'm out to make sure that every woman has their voice and you are owning it. We have to own our voice. Do you know there are parts of this world where women are being persecuted because they are speaking out? Here in the States, we can speak out. Most parts of Africa and Europe, we can speak out. And when we build and own our own podcast, guess what? That's our house. That's our real estate. And we build the table and we pull our chair up to that table. And when we are dead and dust and gone, guess what? Our podcast is going to live on. It's going to be the footprint and the hallmark that she said she was going to do it, and she did it. And somebody somewhere in this big terrestrial ball is going to have access to the podcast that I created and you created. Or if you don't want to create the podcast that you decided you were going to guest on, whichever way you go about it, it is imperative and it is my life mission to make sure that I help you find your voice, build that platform out, own your voice, and invest in yourself always. Because when you present yourself to the world, you'll have no reason to play small. You will be invigorated. That energy that surges inside of every fiber of my being when I talk about podcasting and helping other women, I can't control it. I don't even want to tamp it down. Why should I? For 26 years, I worked in corporate America doing something that I didn't really like. I made a lot of money for somebody else. Made the impact for that company. Why can't the balance of my latter years make a difference for the people that I'm assigned to make a difference to? Why can't I do that? It goes back to me investigating my why. My why is strong. I'm supposed to do this. I am supposed to be a guest on podcasts like this, on shows like this. Thank you, Gertrude. I'm supposed to show up and be me because I have one grandson, and in a couple of months, I'm going to have a granddaughter. I think I'll end up with two grandkids before this thing is over, and they have to know that grandma loved podcasting. Grandma helped people. Grandma had in her office upstairs, she would devote time and she would love every minute of that time that she spent podcasting. So it's just important that we find our voice and we find people who don't make us feel silly or stupid as we are on our journey. Podcasting can be tough. And to actually get into the groove of it, to build yours out with expertise so that you have a firm foundation, it can be a bit dicey. And my my business is not to make you feel stupid. My business is not to lord over you and act like, well, my goodness, you're 65 years old. You ought to know how to do this and you ought to know how to do that. Guess what? I come to this thing with a employee's mindset. So to build out a business that is sustainable, I have to lean up on and glean from an advisor. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's wise. That's how you do it. That's how you make a difference. That's how you make those, as they say, those boss moves. That's how it's done. So it is up to me to make sure that when you come to me for a podcast, that I teach you the way that I learned without any shame, with a whole lot of questions, and you'll come away with confidence. Because at the end of the day, wherever you go, you're going to need your energy and you're going to need your confidence. Whatever subject matter you bring to the table, you back it up with authenticity and you back it up with your confidence. I'm not going to come on here and try to act like I'm Gertrude. I'm Margot Levette. And you know what? I put a whole lot of time and money behind learning who I am and being all right with this woman. Being all right with who I have grown to be. That's a part of the reinvention process. It's ongoing. I had to reinvent myself to become a podcaster, to become a podcast guest, to become an instrument in this great big world so that you can find your voice, so that you can come out of corporate with your feet on the ground, not with your hair on fire like I came out. I came out of a burning building, hauling butt and trying to see what's next. If that's your scenario, know that I've been there and done that. I've been through that. It was a fateful day, that day that I took that phone call, but it was the day of fate for me. It was time for me to recognize what I'd done in the past, and that's tamp down the horrible thing that happened to me when I was a child, when I was 19 years old, when I was a young adult. I tamped that down rather than deal with it, rather than look at it, and rather than make it work for my good. So today, I can tell you, I know what it feels like. And I know that it takes time to work through these places that those kind of incidents take you. I know what it's like to hear that voice that sends a chill down your spine, that a voice that has you ducking and dodging. I know what that's like. So I'm grateful to be able to share my story. I'm Margot Levette, and I reinvented myself to become a podcaster. That's my story. Hi, Gertrude.
Margot, your story is truly, truly, truly inspirational.
I lived through it,
Oh my
and I have to tell it.
gosh. When I meet women like you, it makes me want to wake up every single day and do what I do with passion. Now, I have a question for you is this. There could be a woman who's listening right now, is on the edge, ready to take that move, quit her job, take a leap of faith into the future. From what life has taught you up to this point, what three nuggets of wisdom would you give her? Or
The first nugget that I would give her is to
so did
plan.
that question come through, or did we have a sound issue?
It came through. No, it came through. The first nugget that I would give her would be to plan. Listen to your gut. I actually, what my whole being was in a state of unrest because I knew that I was 61 when that happened, and in my family we retire at 65. You've been stuffing money away in your 401k, so at 65 you're ready to come out. So I had a plan. I just didn't plan to walk away like I did, and it did impact my savings. So my first nugget is to plan. Have a date when this is it. And then the backup to that date, you have to be ready for what may come up. That caught me totally off guard. I didn't see that coming, but I did have a plan. The second thing is form relationships. Don't just jump out there. I would do whatever I'm aspiring to do. I would make sure that I'm working on it on the weekends, after work. I would make sure that I'm establishing my footprint in that arena so that you're not a novice, so that you have some traction digitally and in print. And then the third thing is I would not go it alone. I would take my time and find an advisor. Find somebody who's doing what you want to do in every way. And I would hook my train to them. Invest in yourself because you're worth it. And get yourself with somebody who can help you, guide you. Because as I said earlier, we come from with a employee mindset. And if you're going in to be an entrepreneur, you're going to need help. And maybe the person that you think is going to help you, that's not the one. Give yourself plenty of time to find the one. Those are my three nuggets.
I love that. Yeah, there's no point in trying to reinvent the wheel, right? There are people out there who can make it a shortcut route to get to where you want. They've made the mistakes. You're going to stand on their shoulders and not have a difficult time in achieving your goals.
Yes.
So you're now an established podcaster. You
Yes.
are building your platform. You have your following. Tell us, what is the impact for anybody who's listening on having your own podcast? What does it do for your business and for your life?
Oh my goodness, Gertrude. Something happened to me today. I was over at Kinko's, and well, I had been over there I go over there maybe every other month or something like that. And I remember going over there one day and I was talking to one of the ladies and I told her that I'm a podcaster. And she asked me, well, what's the name of your podcast? I told her her business, her voice, her conversation. She wrote it down. People always say that they're going to do something. And, I went on out the store. Well, I came up, that was a couple of weeks ago, no, a couple of months ago. So I go back over there today and she's looking at something that I have on my flash drive because I want something printed. And she says, I know that name. Oh, I listened to your podcast. You came in here a couple of months ago. I listened to your podcast. I love what you're doing. That's the impact that you never know. You never know who needs what you're putting out into the world. You never know who's waiting on that message that only you can deliver. People want to say that it's a red ocean in podcasting. No, it's not, because I don't care if 50 billion people are talking about how to put a light bulb in a light socket. Guess what? They can't talk about it, teach it, impart that information to the world the way you can. So it's always going to be your time to share what has to be said. Always, always. And when the woman told me that she listened to some episodes and she loved the podcast, oh my goodness, that's the impact. That's the impact. And that's not the first time that that's happened. You know, that's not. She said, I knew you by your voice, and then I saw the name. And that's impact. Yeah. Almost made me cry.
Oh,
Podcasting at co-working.
now the her story movement is all about social impact, and you're very right to use that word. What social impact projects are you involved in? What are you doing through your business to help others in your community? Where does your passion lie to make a difference in the world?
My passion is in teaching podcasting at co-working spaces, and I mean just giving people an opportunity to attend a class. And you're not charging through the wazoo. Yes, it is a business, but for the community, I believe that we have to sow into our community. So in my hometown, we are in talks now. So in August, I am going to teach at my old library, the library that was in the neighborhood where I grew up. It had been on my mind. Want to do something. I want to do something for Rockford. I'm going to be teaching at my old library. And it's that type of thing that I like to do. That's how I like to give back, because we don't have enough people, enough women of color actually podcasting. So any chance I get to teach podcasting and help other women in particular, boomer women in particular, build their table, I'm there. And we don't have to charge all the time. We can just give that information to people and see and let them decide what they want to do with it. So that as far as social impact goes, that's where I'm at. That's how I operate these days.
Fantastic. Now, if I can take you into the future with my final question, we're going to pretend that time is an illusion and you're now 100 years old and you're sitting in your rocking chair surrounded by your children, your great grandchildren, and you're reflecting back on your life. If the present you could go into the future and have a conversation with that woman, what would you say to her based on how she's led you that far?
I would tell her to live like my mother lived. When it was after my dad passed, she was in her 80s, mid 80s, and that woman lived a totally different life. She traveled. We had parties at the house almost every week. Uh, she wore her kitten heel shoes, high heel shoes, until almost 6 months before she passed. But she lived and she laughed and she was unapologetic about her fears, about her family, about how she was learning something new each and every day. And I'm just going to share this tidbit with you. I have an advisor, a business advisor, and she told me, she says, I never dream about any of my clients, but you came to me in a dream. She said, and we were walking here in Vegas, and you were telling me what you didn't want the business to look like any longer. And she said, the reason why I remember it so vividly is because you said, at 83 years old, I don't want to do such and such any longer. So I know that I'm going to be podcasting a good long while. I'm going to gather stories from fabulous men and women for a good long while. And I'll sit in that rocking chair at age 100 and I'll think back about all of the women and men who brought their lives into my life, and how I visited different parts of the country through them, and how I was able to make a small difference in their lives. And if at 101 the Lord wants to take me on, I will have done my life's work. That's how I'll be rolling at age 100 on up.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Thank you so much, Margot, for coming online today and gracing us with your beautiful spirit, your presence. Your energy is infectious. I feel energized and ready to take on my day today. Thank you
Thank,
so much.
thank
And
you,
thank
Gertrude.
you to everybody who tuned in today. The Her Story movement is attracting some phenomenal women who are here to shine the light and show you the way. So tune in again tomorrow when I interview yet another amazing woman. In the meantime, have a fantastic day, morning, or evening, wherever you are in the world. And bye for now. Thank you again, Margot.
Thank you, Gertrude.
Bye for now, everybody.
Bye bye.
All right. Hey, Jerry. You are muted.
I
I'm
know. I
glad.
I had two fans on my computer. I had to move them so you could hear me.
Wonderful to see you, Jerry. How are you? Did you travel well?
I did. It was. I picked up the motorhome. I had let some people use it for a family reunion, so I picked it up from their house and realized I had left the windows open. And so last night I did a major cleaning because the wind had blown and it was dust everywhere.
Oh, no.
But then I did all the regular stuff and then drove it out to Palm Springs.
Fantastic. Well, I'm glad you had a safe journey.
Yes, yeah, I'm getting pretty good at driving this and parking it.
That's
So
good. That's really
yeah,
good. So let's go into an analysis of the first video that I was playing just before you came on. She was talking about her autistic son. Jane Lynn is her name. And what I found about her presentation was she gave a lot of helpful tips to parents with children with special needs, especially those kids who have autism. Just remembering to keep it light, to keep it fun, and not be too intense about how you deal with the children, but also just being fully present to their needs.
yeah.
What did you take out of that presentation, Jerry?
Well, I agree. Hold a second. I'm going to turn the light on.
The other thing that I got from her was planning for the future.
Yes. Well, okay. There was a couple of things that I agree with her. How you handle it. That's part of the reason I'm down here in Palm Springs is I have a granddaughter that has autism as well, and how we handle her is very much like what she was talking about, and it's actually very similar to how I handle Joseph with his Alzheimer's.
Yes.
The same kind of thing. When you work with someone who has um, something different to face in their lives, they take things different than we want them to, or than most people do. And what
Yeah.
if they're out of sorts, it's not as easy for them to say, "Oh, I'm out of sorts. I got to get my act together." They can't do that.
Yes. We can't.
And so how we handle it makes it easier for them to. If we freak out every time they freak out, they're going to freak out even worse, because now
Yeah.
I don't even know that they for sure know they are freaking out. It may seem
Oh,
normal to them, but that happened with Joseph this week. He was having a day where he just started freaking out, and I thought, okay, I can't freak out back at him, because
uh,
it is only going to make things much worse.
worse. Yeah.
And talking to him about it and being patient. Patience is everything. Everything.
Yeah. Wow.
I did
Uh,
really,
it-
also like. Excuse me, I'm sorry. She talked about her daughter's feelings.
yes.
In our case, there's a younger sister who, like she said, understands why so much time is spent with the older sister.
Yes.
The needs of her, understands the parents' feeling about it, but there's always going to be a time when you think, well, what about me? And she's pretty good about making herself known. Like,
Okay.
and that's the key. She's
Yeah.
not bad about it. She just is like, okay, well, this is what I need. And she's so good about helping with her sister that makes it a lot easier for mom and dad.
Oh, that's so good.
A third set of hands. And one time, my granddaughters and I were in a craft store. One of their favorite things to do when I come to visit is make crafts.
Okay.
And Waverly just really had a tough time. And I was not being able to handle her. And her sister was so trying to make it work. She was like right in there with me trying to help her. And we
Right.
ended up coming out okay. But afterwards I thought, what would I have done if she wasn't there?
Yes.
I'm not with her every day. If I was with her every day, I would have known a little bit better what to do.
Yeah. But her
This
little sister knows.
10-year-old is helping me understand, and I'm thinking, wow, you have learned a lot in your young life about how to help care for your sister, and that impresses me.
Wow. And what is the age difference between them?
2.5 years.
That's not big.
No, it's not.
No.
Yeah, and I think they were pregnant when they got the diagnosis of autism
Oh, wow.
again. So, but then they just adore each other. In the early years, the older one didn't even acknowledge her, but now because now Waverly's 13, and it's so fun to see that she actually acknowledges their sister. They take classes together online on how to communicate.
Okay.
We have some pretty good parents there.
That's amazing. And I guess also getting support from other parents with children with the same kind of issues helps too.
Yes. And
Then you don't feel like you're alone.
Right. Well, we just went through this with another set of our grandkids on the other side. And they got the diagnosis quite late. But I was able to share a lot of the things with them that I had seen
Learned.
his wife do.
Yes.
And they did finally get him into services, and now he's functioning much better.
Right.
So it seems to be easier to see it in boys than girls.
Okay. And why do you think that's so?
It's just my observation. I don't know that it's true. I just know that a lot more boys are diagnosed with Alzheimer's. I mean, with
autism, yes,
autism,
than girls.
And having now worked with both sides, boys are sometimes so much stronger. Although this little girl has really gotten strong. she could take me out, I think.
Oh wow.
She's sweet as pie. I've got pictures of her. She wanted me to sit with her on the couch. This is one of my favorite stories. She really wanted me to sit with her on the couch. Well, they have a dog, and I'm allergic to the dog, so I don't sit on the couch.
Right.
So I usually sit on a chair so that I don't have a reaction.
Okay.
She wanted to sit with me, so she's as tall as me. So she sat on my lap. And I've got some great pictures of, her showing me what she was looking at on her iPad, her sitting on my lap, and I just loved it.
That's so sweet.
Yeah, just the best pictures. It's like, oh, so you're gonna sit on my lap, okay? But she just kept pulling me. She's not very verbal, so she just kept pulling me over to the couch, and I kept saying, no, I gotta sit in the chair, okay.
Then she just came and plonked herself on your lap. That is too sweet.
It is. I was trying to take selfies. In the past, she would not look at a camera. I mean,
yeah,
try and take pictures of her, and she would not. Well, she has discovered selfies, and now she wants her picture taken all the time. So I have lots of pictures, and they're great pictures. She's totally engaged in the picture, and I didn't think I'd ever have a picture of her looking at the camera that I took, and engaging. But now I have lots. So that was one.
So beautiful.
Yeah, and they're just flying. They just flew in from New York. So
how wonderful!
I get to spend the next 9 days with them. I'm very excited.
That is fantastic, Jerry. Okay, so we're going to move on to our next video. And again, I've been having challenges with uploading videos, so I will just test first if the video will go up before I read the bio. Otherwise, I'll have to move on to another bio. So let me see if this is going to work. Okay, that didn't work. Try another one. Yeah, I have been technologically challenged. Today is a little bit worse than yesterday. But we got through the day, one video at a time.
Yeah.
Let's see if this is going to work. Here we go. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the HerStory. Okay, looks like we're in business. All right, so I'll just read this and I'll email you the next bio in the meantime.
Okay.
So our next guest is Deborah Roberts. And for more than 25 years, she has had conversations with people who find it challenging to say what they want to say at home and at work. She says, I work with many organizations to improve the communication of their staff, as well as directly affects productivity, retention, happiness, company culture, and creates an atmosphere of stress, tension, and even turnover. I talk to people who are not living the life they want because they don't know how to communicate with the important people in their lives. When there's a breakdown in communication, people usually disconnect from each other. And when you don't know how to recover or start the conversation, things can fall apart. It feels complicated and layered, but not to me. If you hesitate to have an important conversation or are avoiding or struggling with an ongoing conflict, you're not alone. Most importantly, effective communication wasn't modeled in your childhood home, and if you didn't learn about interpersonal skills in school. So where are you supposed to learn these skills? Here is where you come. My communication model is called the Relationship Protocol, and it can change everything. So we'll let Deborah explain who she is. Thank you so much for listening.
Conversation expert and the developer. Hi, I'm Deborah Roberts. I'm a conversation expert and the developer of the Relationship Protocol Communication Model. And that model extends from the boardroom all the way to the kitchen table. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, so an LCSW. I'm also a business consultant and a trauma consultant. So I'm the full package. And I have a lot of experience working in nonprofit organizations. I've worked with children who were in crisis, a runaway program. I've worked in poverty legal settings. I've worked in health and mental health settings. I've had a private practice for many years. And I've also been working in businesses and dealt a lot with traumatic situations. Excuse me. And so what I found in all of those different experiences that I had, that the common denominator is that regardless of the setting, the circumstances, the challenges, that when I was able to teach people how to communicate, how to express what they need, how to resolve their conflicts, build trust, communicate in a way that they can feel heard, everything changed. The quality of their life changed, the relationships changed, the trajectory of a relationship or even an interaction. Meaning, when we learn how to approach an interaction, how to continue and navigate something, and how to not engage in that, that hustle, that fight, how to have differences and know how to communicate about them. It makes such a difference in the quality of our lives and the quality and depth of our relationships. And so when I realized that what I was doing was different, because to be honest, for about 20 years, I kept hearing these wonderful comments about my work, and I had a huge private practice and a big consulting business, but I didn't realize that what I was teaching was so different than what other people were, how they were working. And when I realized it, I did a lot of due diligence, and I found out that my work was different, that I was teaching the fundamentals, just the basics of how to have a conversation. And here in the United States and probably all over the world, we don't teach people how to talk to each other, how to resolve differences, how to get along, and how to be heard. And so I started doing this. I ended up writing and writing and writing. And I created this model, the Relationship Protocol Communication Model. There are 6 components to the communication model. The first 2 key elements, what they do is they teach you how to have a perspective for being in a healthy relationship and or to have a productive interaction, whether it's with someone that's in a personal relationship or a business relationship, family, friend, whomever. And the 4 steps are the how-tos. How do you have conversations? It gives you the fundamental ways of having conversations. So I ended up writing my book. And I guess one of the things that really was so shocking to people around me was that while I was excited about the book, I thought it could be a download that could be sent out without me being involved in it, that the relationship protocol was that good that everybody would want it. I didn't really understand that I had to be a part of it. So unfortunately, there was a big delay for a long period of time because I couldn't get out of my own way. I'm a private person. I wasn't interested in being in the public eye. I wasn't interested in being public at all. So I didn't want my name on my book. I didn't want my picture on my book, and I delayed the process. Eventually I caved, put my name on it, put my picture on, but I'm not kidding. I think I delayed the process for more than a year. It was more than a year, if I admit it. And when I look at it now, the picture on my book is this 1-inch black and white shot. And I understand it's a relationship book. I had to put my name on it. I get it. I couldn't get out of my own way. But I think what started to happen was I realized that what I'm talking about is important. And what I'm talking about is something that can be duplicated and can be received by people in all settings. And that's part of what my drive was. So it kind of became a mission for me in a small way back then. Now I'll tell you in a moment more about my current mission. But that mission became, wow, this is a little bigger than me. It's not just about Deborah Roberts going out there. It's about the relationship protocol. It's about the capacity for reaching more people. And I'm a social worker at heart. I believe in grassroots stuff. So I was excited at the possibilities. And that's where all of this started for me. Once I started to realize that what I was saying was so important and it can change lives and it can make a difference. I'm talking about how to show up in a committed way, whether it's in a close, important, intimate relationship, or whether it's at work. How do we show up to build trust and so that people can connect with us and know they can count on us and feel secure in our interactions? And how do we turn towards others, showing up in a way that's relational? If I'm upset with you, I might turn away. If I'm distracted, I might turn away. But I'm also talking about bigger issues now, that turning away can have to do with biases, that I can be turned away from you because I don't like you, I don't like the department you work in, I don't like your sexuality, your race. And when I am behaving that way, I'm turned away. And I teach people that it's important to understand when you're dealing with someone who cares about you and wants to get along with you for the sake of the company, for the sake of the relationship, for the sake of your marriage, whatever it is, and they can switch and turn towards. We all do that. We all can be distracted or annoyed at things. But people who are invested in their negativity and want to stay there, they're turned away. And a group of people who are turned away can cause a lot of damage. And that's the kind of stuff that I'm talking about now. I'm trying to help everybody understand and give words and language to how we communicate and how we can show up. And when sometimes you're just not going to make a difference. You can't reach people that don't want to be reached. We all know that. If we want to change and we understand that we have the power to show up in our best, as our best self, and communicate in a way that people can hear us and that they want to figure out a way to communicate with us. So my mission, bigger than I am, is to make the world a kinder, more communicative place. And to do that, we need to be kind and we need to be able to talk about our differences. And these days, I know that that's a tough mission, but I think we can do it. I came from a family where my mother was a third grade teacher when I was growing up. And she worked in a minority area. She worked in a very, very low income area. And every year I would spend the day with her, a few days, with her students. I was the same age as her third graders, so I was 9 or 10 years old, even starting going there younger. And she would always be so loving to these children and so kind and respectful. And I remember her saying to me from a very young age, everybody's important and these kids are important and we're going to give them a little extra love because they don't always get that in the world. But that's what we're going to do here. And she just made it a normal part of what I was supposed to understand about human interaction and how we love and respect each other. My father was a salesman, and when I was graduating college, when he came to my graduation, he looked so upset. And I said to him, what's going on? And my parents told me that my father had gotten fired from his job. He was a very proud man. he had become the national sales manager of a company. And he was proud of that position because he had been a salesman for them and he worked his way up the ladder. What he found was that a big corporation took over the company and they wanted him to treat the salesmen differently, treat them like they're numbers, treat them like they don't really matter that much. And he wasn't going to do that. He refused to do that. And in so doing, he got fired. He felt that these were my peers, but these are people who are working hard, they're doing their job, they're motivated to get things done. But the corporation wanted more numbers, more action. And even though they had a great year that year with my father in his last few years working for them, it didn't matter to them. They didn't like that he was still friends with these people, that he treated them like human beings, that he wasn't looking to be the authoritative personality. And back then, we're talking many decades ago, he was in many ways ahead of his time. He wanted to treat them like human beings. He wanted to create a positive culture. So combined, realizing as I've gone through this process and learned about myself in the process, I realized that I came from parents who have influenced my model and influenced, of course, my way of thinking. But it's really important to understand that at the root of the relationship protocol communication model, it is about kindness and it is about treating people with respect and learning how to listen to each other. What I've also done now is I've expanded. And I've taken this model, I've brought it into the workplace. So now I created a course that I'm so proud of. I poured my heart into it, as I like to say. It is an 8-lesson online program for the workplace. I call it the trifecta. The trifecta is, well, let me explain. So in order to be an effective communicator, you need to have self-awareness. So you need to be aware of who you are. You need to understand the value of self-awareness and how to communicate with others in a way where you're paying attention. Even the best communication skills won't matter if I'm not aware of how I show up in the world and how I impact people. So I teach in this program how to increase your self-awareness and why it's so important. What I also teach is the relationship protocol model, but I've changed it. I've created some tweaks. It's the same 6 components, but these components are taught with a workplace culture in mind. So it's the relationship protocol at work. So you learn the basics of how to approach a conversation, whether it's from a leadership position or an employee position. And you learn how to build trust, how to demonstrate your commitment, deal with conflicts. And then the last part of the trifecta, which I think is really cool, is the master class. And the master class is all about coping. It's called Life Strategies for Wellness. I teach 5 coping skills, on-the-go coping skills for dealing with stress, dealing with overwhelm. What about if you have a lot of negative self-talk? How can you start to turn that around? I also talk about emotional triggers. So if you think of a full functioning human being and how we want to be in our relationships, how we want to show up at work, how we want to show up in life. If I can teach these organizations, nonprofit organizations, big, small companies, how to have these cultures where we can figure out a way to talk about our differences, to talk about conflicting topics, and to feel more confident and equipped to express what we need, we have a whole different ballgame going. And you have to know self-awareness. You have to have good, solid, fundamental communication skills like the relationship protocol and now the relationship protocol at work. And you have to be able to cope. Because what if in the course of the conversation or in the course of the day, you start to feel overwhelmed? It doesn't matter what a great communicator you are if you don't know how to self-soothe, if you don't understand what's going on and how to take better care of yourself. So it's super important to be able to be someone who can show up fully formed. And what this program does is it takes my years, my decades of being a clinician, and a business consultant and a trauma consultant, put it all together. And now I'm going to enter the workplace. This is new for me. You mentioned challenges. I don't fully see this as a challenge, even though it's a newer arena, but I do see it as interesting. I wake up every day and say, how can I serve on a deeper level? And I do believe that I am arriving at that deeper level by being able to reach more people, touch their lives, and make those changes. If we can become a world where people know how to talk to each other, just the basics, imagine what that would feel like and how we can all show up in a way that we can feel proud and we can connect on a deeper level. We can care about each other and be just the peaceful, kind place that we all deserve. So I hope you've enjoyed learning about me. I could talk about communication and the changes that I would love to see in the world and in our interactions one by one human being to the next. I can talk about it for a long time. So if you'd like to reach me, I have a website, therelationshipprotocol.com. I'm on LinkedIn at Deborah Roberts, Debra Roberts, and I'm also on Instagram at The Relationship Protocol. So I hope to hear from you, and thank you again for the opportunity.
Fantastic. I'm going to bring our guest on to share more nuggets of wisdom with us. Deborah, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm good, Gertrude. Thank you so much for having me.
Communication is everything. You know, right now we are faced with the war in Ukraine. The world is a little bit upside down, and a lot of conflict can be solved with dialogue. So from your experience, what causes people to fail to communicate effectively?
Such a great question. Communication usually fails because we don't know what to say. We don't know how to start a conversation, and we don't know what to do once we're having the conversation if it starts to take a turn. If the person's getting upset or if we disagree with each other, everybody kind of holds their positions, and usually no one knows how to navigate a conversation when it gets a little tense, or if we disagree, how to resolve it in a way where we both feel heard. And also then it's a matter of many people avoiding the conversations that they should be having as well.
A lot of marriages break down because of that.
Mm-hmm.
People avoid addressing the elephant in the room, so to speak, sweep
Yes.
things under the carpet. What advice would you give to couples who are struggling with hearing each other? Because sometimes you speak or you talk to each other, but if there is already conflict, the other won't hear. What is this?
So when you're talking about really any relationship, but we can certainly address couples, and I think that the big thing is that you have to remember that there are two of you having the conversation. So as much as you have something on your mind and you want to be able to express it, it's very important that you remember that when you're finished speaking, that you listen to the other person and that you make sure that you're hearing them. Sometimes we are so wrapped up in our own thoughts, in what we want to say and or being right, that we hold our position. That's not being relational. Being relational means that you matter to me and how you feel matters to me, particularly if we are in a personal relationship. So how you feel matters. And if I'm committed to having a positive interaction that's productive, I'm going to take a moment and let you speak and actively listen with curiosity to what you're saying, not just to cut you off or to prove you wrong, but to try to put myself in your shoes as well. That's how we connect in all interactions, when we are connecting for the sake of something bigger, for the sake of our relationship, for the sake of our team or our organization, we interact with each other in a way that both people feel heard and can express themselves without feeling like they have to prove their point or win.
Fantastic. Now, a lot of communication skills start in the home as you're growing up with your parents, you're learning through observation. If you have come from a dysfunctional family where communication was not the thing, what can you do as an adult to address the deficit that you have?
So let me first say that I love that you're making this point, because one of the things that struck me the most when I first decided to take the work that I do and want to spread it around the whole world was because I realized that there's this somehow this misunderstanding, this misnomer that as human beings, as we become adults, somehow we know how to communicate. And, kind of thing like where we know how to be parents. Automatically, we're just supposed to know how to do this, how to have this amazing skill set. And if you think of how important communication is, the fact that, at least here in the States, there are no classes for this. And if you don't have parents who model it and talk to you and teach you, you can't learn it on your own. You have to rather learn it on your own and figure it out. Or maybe you just have a personality where you're a little bit easier in communication. It's just something that comes more naturally. But for most people, they really are functioning in a limited capacity because they're uncomfortable about at least one area of communication, whether it's bringing up a topic or navigating a difficult conversation or dealing with conflicts. One of the best things you can do is think, if it's an important conversation, is think ahead of time about what you want to say and think of a few highlights, a few takeaways that you want the other person to have. And even jot them down, 1 or 2, maybe even 3 takeaways, but no more, because then it's too many. And approach the conversation by giving the other person the benefit of the doubt that they also want to have a good outcome, so that you're more open-minded, almost like you're going on a first date with someone when you're curious about them and you want to get along with them. And that's the approach you have, even if it's a challenging interaction. Approaching it from a positive perspective will give you a chance at a much better outcome. And then state your intention. I wanted to talk to you about this because this is important to me. And if you give me a minute to explain what I want to say, I think it'll make sense to you. Or then I want to hear what you have to say. But I think when something is important to you, have the conversation, think ahead of time of what you want to say and how you want the other person to feel, how you want to come across, and then plan a little bit for it so that you're a little bit more relaxed and you have a better chance, again, at having a positive outcome rather than blurting something out or just speaking without really thinking it through, because you might not have a chance to have another opportunity to say what you need to say.
Wow. Now, the world is changing in terms of workplace communication. COVID has now forced people to work online, to work using Zoom, and managers are needing training on how to manage their staff when having online meetings and events. What tips, ideas would you give anyone in a management position? Because sometimes you have people in the workplace who are quiet, who are not outcoming. Mm-hmm. How would you manage it on an online setting using Zoom or StreamYard?
I think the main point when we're talking about communication between management and people on their team or employees that work with them, it's the same thing whether you're on Zoom or not. There's a little bit of an extra piece of it when you're in an online conversation, but in general, you need to communicate. And there has to be an ability where there's open conversation, where the person who is a team member knows that they can share with you if something isn't working right, that they can make a mistake, and that it's an open communication environment where people feel like they belong and that they matter. So it's up to the manager, If it's on Zoom, sometimes you have to over communicate and double check, because someone can say, yeah, I'm fine, I'm great. And you don't really get a full sense of who they are and what's going on because you're not physically near the person. So you're missing some body language or some energy shifts that you might notice if you were sitting with them or you were near them in a meeting. So asking questions, how is it going? How can I support you? Is there something we can do better? Gives people an opportunity to give you feedback. I would suggest doing that whether you are in a remote relationship and or if you're in person. But it's up to the manager to create the environment where the person feels welcomed and comfortable sharing what they need to say or what they want to say.
Fantastic. Now, going forward into the future, do you see the world going back to normal, or is this the new norm?
I have a column on Inc.com, and I waver about making these predictions because I thought we would have been back in the office, and I didn't write about it because I knew I really couldn't have known. And here we are with different situations that are in the news even today about companies that are requiring their staff to come back in full time, and people are revolting. So I think we are seeing the new normal, that companies are realizing that the power shift has changed, that employees are speaking up about the quality of their life and their ability to work remotely. I think the hybrid method is probably going to be more of the new normal, where people will be able to work from home and maybe come in for more group-oriented meetings and or some social connections so that they can feel a different kind of bonding, because you do lose some of those social connections with purely an online connection. And in those circumstances where it is purely online, to do things that are a little bit social online, whether it's having coffee together or creating some kind of fun contests and doing different things, sharing things for icebreakers, is also really good for companies to do, to not lose that social piece, even if people are all over the country. So I do think the new normal is going to be kind of what it is now. Maybe some companies will go to in-person, but a lot of companies are satisfied with the way things are going.
Fantastic. Well, Deborah, thank you so much for coming online this morning and sharing your wisdom with us. Look forward to staying connected with you. And if anybody wants to get in touch with you, we have your website scrolling at the bottom of the screen.
Perfect.
And thank you to everybody who's tuned in today. The HerStory movement is attracting some very amazing women, bringing us nuggets of wisdom, knowledge, and ideas. So tune back again tomorrow when I come back with yet another amazing guest. In the meantime, have a fantastic day, morning, or evening, wherever you are in the world. Deborah, thank you again for the interview.
Thank you.
Okay, we are back. So that was Deborah Roberts sharing her wisdom on communication in the workplace and in personal relationships. How are you doing there, Jerry?
Good. I really enjoyed that. Gosh, she pretty much picked that all that out of my brain. That's the same way I feel. Communication is so important, and kindness in communication gets you so much further than demanding, especially at work. I mean, I had many experiences where someone would come on the airplane and they'd be so upset because someone in the airport was rude to them. And it was my goal to make sure that when they walked off that airplane, they walked off with a smile. And I don't think I ever found anyone I couldn't. Just people want to be treated nice.
Yeah.
People want, and the only way, I mean, there are a lot of people who, that question you asked about, what if you had a dysfunctional family, you didn't communicate in your family? That is probably era than just family. You know, like in my era, people didn't sit down and talk about their feelings,
Yes.
and yet nowadays we do. It's I don't think our parents communicate with their parents, and so it was really difficult with my mom because she had some other challenges. But when it came to my kids, I would kind of force them to communicate with me. It's like my son was 6'1", and he was really went through a period where he would lock himself in his bedroom and not want to talk to anyone in the family. You know, and I would look up at him and go, "You're part of this family. You need to be here with us." Like,
Oh.
I didn't. He was a kind-natured kid, so I never was afraid to, stand up to him and say, this is better for you if you come and be with us and you
Yes.
interact. But I had to kind of force him most of the time. But he didn't have. I see some kids when you try and do that with them, they turn the other way. He didn't. He needed to be told that he was valuable and that he needed to be with us, and we wanted him there.
That's just beautiful, Jerry. Absolutely beautiful. So we have one more video to share. It's a short one. It doesn't have an interview, but it was just an introductory video from a beautiful woman by the name of Marsha Morgan. You're going to read the bio while I line up the video, and hopefully everything works.
Did you send it to me? I haven't seen it yet.
I gave you the link in the chat. You just click on that. Yeah.
Okay, let me go to it.
Okay. I'll line up the video in the meantime.
Okay.
All right. Did you find it?
Yes.
Okay.
Marsha K. Morgan brings a wealth of experience helping women and girls reach their full potential, drawing on more than 40 years as a consultant, researcher, trainer, and author of Gender and Crime. This sought-after motivational speaker tackles the casualties of women's dreams and how to recapture them in this latest work. In 1996, she and a colleague developed a groundbreaking anatomically correct dolls. I can't say that word, obviously. Now used around the world to interview victims of child sexual abuse. Early on, Marsha made her mark heading up the first all-female rape investigation program for the United States. Her related books for professional and children are highly regarded by national and international organizations. As the executive director of Megima LLC since 1980, she oversees an innovative firm that provides consulting services in criminal justice and social issues. Marsha, her husband, and Yellow Lab live in Bend, Oregon. It is with great pleasure that we welcome Theo.
Thank you, Jerry. Here we go.
Oh, let me down a little more. Is it too late?
Good afternoon. Good morning, Gertrude. This is Marsha Morgan. I live in Bend, Oregon in the United States. And I wanted to say thank you so much for including me in your HerStory efforts. I find it so exciting and I'm honored to be a part of it. Just to give you a little background about myself and to answer the questions that you wanted me to address. I'm 70 years old next year. Not sure how that happened. but I've had a wonderful life. I have dedicated my life to justice for women and giving women a voice. Both of those topics work very well together. I have been a criminologist for about 45 years. I do research, consulting, training, writing, curriculum development. I work with prisons, I work with juvenile facilities, work with victims of crime, anything in the criminal justice system, and as it has something to do with gender. So I've seen a lot in my life. My business and my passion have been intertwined. It's really hard to differentiate what is my values in my real life from my work, because it's one and the same. Why share my story right now? Probably it's kind of the age thing. I retired, semi-retired, a couple weeks before the pandemic hit. Interesting timing. But I realized I think I was ready to kind of slow down. You know, most of my friends had retired, and I thought, oh, I'll never stop doing this kind of work. But I'm finding that I'm needing to reinvent myself. I stopped taking clients. I worked mostly out of Washington, D.C., and I worked all over the country, and I did a lot of work overseas, which I'll talk about in a minute as well. So it was hard to let go of that part of my life, you know, that was on airplanes a lot and going into new places and meeting new people, but it was time to pass the baton. So being invited to this effort was kind of cathartic for me too, as I was trying to answer your questions and really think through what is this next chapter and what is the wisdom that I've gained that I can also pass on to others in my work. So my background, why I got involved in this kind of work. I grew up in Oregon with a wonderful, nurturing family. I have one sister, and she went into the ministry, interesting, and I went into crime. Kind of interesting ways of looking at it. But we both had, and our whole family had, a real sense of justice and, you know, helping the underdog, the people that maybe were less fortunate, that kind of thing. So I started watching TV. It was a product of early television, and I was intrigued with all of the police shows. There were a lot of them at that time, but I will say there were none that had women as the main characters. It was always men. And then as I was getting a little bit older, like in high school, there were some women police officers. Policewoman was the name of one of them. And anyway, I started thinking, you know, that's interesting. I have always been fascinated with this part of the world, part of society that I really didn't understand. It was so different from my world. And I wanted to understand the criminal mind and really what made people tick and click. So I went to school and got a bachelor's degree. And my first job was in law enforcement. I did that for 7 years, and I was heading up an all-female sexual assault unit. This was 1975, and it was very unusual to have women officers. And I could probably spend a whole nother couple of days talking about, you know, that experience. We were not exactly warm and welcomed into the police world. Things have changed a great deal, luckily, but there were a lot of kind of really ugly things that happened as we kind of did some trailblazing stuff. But it was such a rewarding job. I feel so fortunate that I had that. It was right in the middle of the second wave of feminism. So people were really looking at what's going on with sexual assault. Why are we blaming the victim, et cetera? So I spent a lot of my time changing laws, testifying, going to hospitals, setting up procedures, setting up evidence collection, going to the community. You know, I gave literally thousands of talks over the years, trying to address the values. Why are we blaming the victim in these kind of cases? Went to court, you know, all sorts of things. It was an exciting time because so much needed to be done. There was such injustice in the system. So during that time, a colleague and I that I was working with on this team, we decided we were having a lot of issues, problems talking to young sexual assault victims. And so we came up with the idea of the anatomical dolls. They're cloth dolls that about 20 inches tall, that had all the correct sexual body parts on them. And so when you interviewed children who'd been victims of abuse, they could demonstrate with the dolls what happened to them. So it was less traumatic for them. When they went to court, it was very visual, very graphic for the jury. So there was real clarity in the communication. That started taking off. So my business partner and I, we formed a business, Magima LLC, in 1980. So I've had this business for 42 years, left the police work. And we formed this business to have a piece of it be the manufacturing of these dolls. So we had a team of women that sewed them, and we did them in 3 skin colors, and they went to 40 countries. And my business partner and I would go to the countries, we'd follow the dolls, and we would help the countries set up forensic interviewing structures or techniques. I wrote a couple books on how to interview correctly without traumatizing the victim, without leading or being suggestive to the victim, et cetera. So it was exciting. We got to go to Singapore and Australia, New Zealand, all over Europe and Asia. So it was really rewarding to see that happen. Also, during that time, I was looking at doing a little more work in prisons, and that seems a little interesting, or what's the connection? But almost all women in prisons had been victims of sexual assault. So it was kind of a full circle thing. So I would work with the federal government to set up what we call gender responsive services throughout the prison system, juvenile and adult system, on how to help women who were incarcerated to be successful, to be able to get out of prison and stay out of prison. So many of them had been abused, as I mentioned. So many were into drugs or alcohol as a way of coping with their trauma, et cetera. So once you started looking holistically at what was going on, that was really very helpful. So that's kind of a snapshot of what I've done in my business. And it truly is a passion. I've seen so many rewards, not only verbally from people that I've worked with, but I wrote the Safe Touch curriculum, which is used throughout the country. It's for elementary school. And it was one of the early curricula that taught about okay and not okay touches. And I still get letters, newspaper clippings from people saying that their child or a child in their classroom reported after going through the Safe Touch curriculum, so that they wouldn't have had an avenue or even known the words or know how, or they were okay to report. So that's been very rewarding to know that some offenders been taken off the street. I get letters occasionally about the dolls too, that it helped get somebody off the street. And I also wrote My Feelings, which was one of the first books in the 80s for children, on teaching them to trust their feelings or instincts about touch. So that was really helpful too, that I hear back from people on that as well, that it was helpful. So sometimes you feel like you're going upstream and in a vacuum at your computer, but those letters and feedback really, really help keep me going. So I think just to answer some of your other questions about if I looked back on my younger self, what would I say, some nuggets of or wisdom? I think the first one would be to go ahead and take more risks. You know, I'm pretty pragmatic. My parents were pretty pragmatic. And so, you know, you kind of took one step at a time, and that's okay. But I think back on a few things. Why didn't we do this? And why didn't we speak up a little bit more about that, or take this plunge in some sort of way? So I think taking more risks would be a big one. I think keeping true to yourself about your heart and your passion. Maybe like many women watching this, you know, there've been a few male relationships in my life that kind of got me sidetracked a little bit, that maybe weren't the healthiest. And, you know, I kept that passion, but it really was put on the back burner for the other person's dreams and aspirations without much recognition of my own. So that's one I think a lot of women can relate to. The third is to really only be around nice people. And that really applies, I think, to not just a work world, but in any kind of relationship, in your friendships. You need cheerleaders around you. You need people that support your dreams and your efforts. And that's who you should surround yourself with. So those would be the kind of my nuggets. In terms of my future self, I think that's a really great question. If I was 100 years old, what would I say, kind of looking into the future? I would say I don't have any regrets. Maybe that kind of ties in with that risk thing I mentioned earlier, but really live without regrets. Don't leave anything on the table, go for the gusto. I think also to plan and leave a legacy. And that's kind of what I'm wrestling with right now, I think. How do you pass that baton, and what do you want to leave? So when I say leave, I think that also means spirit. It doesn't necessarily mean something just tangible like a curriculum book or a children's book or book for women, whatever. I think that can be good, but I'm looking more, I guess, at the bigger picture and more of an energy and a spiritual nature too. So that legacy, I think, is a big one. And what change do you want to see when you leave the world? My mantra, and I do say it every morning, it's on my top of my little to-do list, is I really want to give women a voice in all walks of life, whether it's in a prison cell or it's because you've just been traumatized in a victim situation, a crime situation, or you're sitting in a classroom, or you're hiking in a mountain. I mean, whatever it is, any relationship, you should have a voice. You are valued. You should not be dismissed. I think we have all felt that, and that's probably one of the changes I want to, or efforts I want to see go forward. A lot of people work on this effort. A lot of people work on equality, and that's really what it's about: not being dismissed, having an equal voice, being at the table. Worrying about younger women, I think, is also a little bit of a concern to me. And I'm sure every generation feels this, but I had rights. We all had rights that our mothers or grandmothers did not have. But I see young women today not thinking twice about the fact they have the right to choose, or to choose what they need and want for their own body, medically, or whatever might be going on, or that they have freedom to run track and field. I mean, we didn't have women's sports when I was in high school. My mom was born when women didn't have a right to vote. So, you think about, it's not that long ago, and we can lose those rights and opportunities in a flash. I think in the United States, we have really felt that here in the last few years. So for me, I want to be sure that when we pass the torch, that young women will understand the HerStory of what's gone on, and hold tight to that, and really cherish it. So I could talk a lot about what's going on, but I know you said about 15 minutes. So that's just kind of in a nutshell. I've had a great life. I got to represent the United States at the NATO conference in Italy to talk about victimization of women. So I've had a number of amazing things, had some creepy things happen in this line of work. You can't help but have your life threatened and be urinated on, and when you're walking by a cell, or was kidnapped in a taxi cab in Brazil. I mean, I've had a few dark side things happen too, but overall, I'm feeling wonderful about the progress that we've made, and I know we'll make some more. Thanks for including me.
Wow. What an amazing.
Yes, that was amazing. Wow. I've seen those anatomical dolls. I can't say it, but I've seen them. I had a student that had to use one, and I interpreted for her. And she's the one that invented it. How about that? That's amazing.
Yeah. And this is what excites me about our movement, Jerry. We are meeting some really amazing human beings who are on this planet making real, tangible change and difference in children's lives and in women's lives as well.
Yeah, that and I was her. I was so interested in police stories and stuff like that. So it's kind of exciting for me to see someone who took that, because I would literally watch those kind of shows all the time earlier in my life when I watched TV. I don't really watch TV very much anymore. But I remember thinking, man, I would love to. I didn't really want to be in law enforcement because I didn't really think that's where I was supposed to be, but I was intrigued by it, like she was, and she took it and then ran with it, and then did extraordinary things, going to NATO. That whole thing is just quite extraordinary, and she's a fabulous presenter.
It certainly is, Jerry. Beautiful end to our day today.
Yes.
So this is the end of day 6 of the Her Story Online Summit. We will be back again tomorrow, ladies and gentlemen, same time, 2 p.m. Pacific, 7 a.m. in Melbourne, Australia, 5 a.m. in New Zealand, I think 9 o'clock in the evening in the UK. So do join us when we come up with another lineup of amazing speakers. Jerry, thank you so much for coming and hanging out with me today.
Thanks for inviting me. I enjoyed it.
See you all tomorrow, everybody. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.